victory and the agony of defeat.
Matterson, great ball around the corner, Petticini, he beats them all! Junior Polar out wide, bumped away from Trindle, Sharks coming through, none of them can hold this!
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Let me just bring in the big fella as we come to you live on a Team List Tuesday. Yes, it is TLT, and I'm your host, John, also known as 4020, joined by my great mate, and if I don't stumble over it, the big fella 60s, aka Craig, here, to chat to everyone that's in chat. There you go, chatting to chat, as it were, about all things Parramatta, all things NRL, because it is the news podcast. Massive hello to everyone that's joined us live from, well, we're running a little bit late, but it is 7:36 p.m. as we get into the introduction. Big fella, how you doing, and how's everyone in chat going?
Yeah, I'm doing well, John. A really full ticket to talk about tonight. Not just in the Parramatta side of things, but also on the NRL side of things.
It's a just been Bonanza. Everything's back rolled this week. There is well, except for big Josh Papali, I suppose, or Papali'i, sorry, but a lot of background news this week.
Yeah, there certainly is. Also, thank you to everyone joining us there in chat, and don't forget, if you've got questions that you want to ask, throw them in. John keeps track of that, and if there's as best we can. But just if you've got something you want to ask, we will try to get to answering those questions. Shout out, of course, to our sponsors, Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan, and Parramatta, and of course the home of the Eels, Parramatta Leagues Club. Reminder as well, if you can give a like and subscribe, get that notification bell happening for us on YouTube as well, that would be great. And no matter what platform that you're on, again, that like and subscribe, it just helps us to get that content out there to as many fellow Parramatta Eels supporters as possible, get that algorithm working for us. John, as I said, plenty that's happening. I guess we should really be hitting that stinger and getting underway.
Yeah, let's get right into it.
News team, assemble!
Now, John, I'm not getting the stinger at all, so I'm not sure if when it's come to the end there. So I'm just going to jump in right now.
Your timing was pretty good. I'm not sure what happened there.
Look, not to worry, mate. But first cab off the rank is obviously the big news about Kelma Tuilagi leaving the Eels at the end of this year and joining the Melbourne Storm. He's originally from the Melbourne system before he went elsewhere, so he came through their junior pathway. So he's now returning to the club where it all started around 6-7 years ago. So that is big news. I mean, it's not necessarily a surprise that was going to happen. I think his contract was up at the end of this season anyway, but just confirmation of that spot being made available now for any other recruitment or internal promotions for Eels players. Your thoughts on it, mate?
Sorry, I'm just getting conflicting reports in chat about people hearing the stinger or not. Some people saying that they never hear it, and then I've got people saying that they've heard it. So it's a troubleshooting nightmare. Guys, I'll just say right now, we've got nothing to comment on Josh. There is no news. There is lots of speculation and rumours out there, which doesn't do anyone any good. We're not going to comment on any of that sort of stuff because there's nothing concrete out there. I'm sure one way or the other that'll be resolved in the coming weeks or months. But he's playing reserve grade. He's named to play reserve grade. So that's where we're at.
And if we can just say as well, John and I had a bit of a quick chat about that, whether we'd even mention about the rumours that were out there at the moment. I think everyone's heard the rumours. It doesn't need us to go into it. And we don't think that it necessarily benefits anyone
Doesn't help
to
anyone. We saw what happened with Dylan
discuss
Walker, and when you start rumour mongering and how damaging that can be very quickly. So when there's something concrete out there, we'll get something from the news. There'll be a media guy on it for sure. All the Eels will figure it, like they'll announce something one way or the other. So I legitimately
we
have no
then
idea.
become we try to be sensible in regard to this, because when it's only at that rumour stage and you don't want to be part of giving air to a rumour and being part of, I guess, if you call it the problem, being part of a problem or growing a problem. So that's why we're just leaving that alone for now. If it comes out that there's any substance to anything that's been floating around, then we'll talk about it as soon as we have the opportunity to do so. But just for now, we'll just leave that be. So, John, just on the Kelma.
Yes, so that was the big the news cycle there about the Melbourne Storm signing big KT for season 2027. I don't know. It's always funny when this sort of thing happens, because some of the social media response has been filtered down to me, Craig, because I don't frequent socials that often when it comes to the NRL, for better or worse, and I'd like to think for the better in general. But some of the responses were pretty humorous, because there were people blowing up about it and how could we lose Kelma, when it feels like the reverse has been, like, reaction for Kelma's been here most of his time is people blowing up about him on the field. And how can you be picking him in first grade and whatnot? And so it is always funny seeing the reverse response there. And for what it's worth, Kelma's had good games for us. He's had great games for us, and he's had holes in his game he hasn't been able to get out of. And going to Melbourne, maybe he can fix that up there. He is a Melbourne junior, funnily enough, so that is a bit of a full circle moment for him. But the general consensus has been amongst neutrals that he's going to be whipped into an elite back rower down in Melbourne, which has been their mandate for a long time. But in the last 24 months, I don't know if it is anymore, Craig. I mean, he might go down there and play great football because he's a dynamic attacker. But I expect him to be Kelma Tuilagi. Like, he'll have some great games offensively and then miss some tackles and be a bit sloppy around the ruck. Because that's what he's been for Parramatta, where you sort of take the good for the bad there. He's a flawed player, but he's got some genuine upside that he brings to you with the ball in hand.
Oh, look, Kelma's been one of those players who, on his day, in his moments, is actually a genuine match winner. The impact that he can have on an edge has always been where you just think to yourself, there is a superstar potentially here. It just, in terms of consistency of performance, it hasn't quite been there. But, John, I would almost argue that this season he may have been a little bit more consistent than Gideon, because I think in regard to performance, they both got a similarity. You don't always get the best from them, but when they do deliver their best, well, they can turn the tide of a match.
And Kelma's had the benefit of playing on Mitchell Moses' side, whereas Gideon's had that sort of rotating wheel of halves in the likes of Pezzett and Volkman, and then whoever else has been a sort of fill-in 5'8" for him at times. But again, I don't disagree, but Kelma's done some good stuff this year. But yeah, both the back roles, and look, I suppose the benefit of doubt for Gideon is that Kelma is a little bit older, not tremendously older, but he is a bit older and more NRL experienced. But yeah, your point stands. Yeah.
So that's, of course, a departure. Another departure, which we knew was coming anyway, but it's a little bit more official, is Ryan Matterson has medically retired now. So we knew that he wasn't going to be playing this season.
You didn't need to be an insider to read the tea leaves there. That was one of those ones where, even if you're 1,000 miles away from the team, literally and figuratively, Ryan wasn't taken to the field this year. And the link there being quite obvious with the concussions. And, it is sad because, Matterson, when he probably peaked with Parramatta in 22, when he helped us get to the grand final, was tremendous in the back row there. A real difference maker.
Was that also his origin season?
I want to say yes. I feel like it would have been. Let me just double check that while we're chatting. But he did some tremendous things for us. Was a really exciting junior coming through as well. It's easy to forget that he was a Parramatta junior way back in 2014 was it, when he was with us, and then he went to we got to grand final qualifier for him in the then NYC, and then he went to the Roosters a year later. And Roosters won a premiership. Tigers fell out there, came back to Parramatta, played nearly 100 games, just shy of that, and played Origin in 22. You're right, Craig, so good memory there. Did a lot of great things for the Eels. I know that fans really clung on to taking that suspension in the wake of the grand final and how it meant that he was quitting on the team and whatnot. I feel like that was, maybe I'm misreading that, Craig. I feel like that was very overplayed by the fans, but the lingering concussion issues, which have been a problem for him, right through his career, obviously came to a head, if you pardon the pun there, a really negative pun. And I completely understand where he's at, both literally and figuratively, for his headspace, because you're talking about short and long-term health of mind. And the degenerative influences of CTE, they're scary. So I know it ends on a bitter end for fans because he didn't finish his football career on the park, and there was the whole will he want to come back to the club and whatnot. But I'd like to think that he did pretty good as an Eel. Again, part of that 22 squad, part of that entire run from 2019. He came to us in 2020, but nearly that entire run where we were camped inside the top 8 for 4 years, which culminated in that grand final. So did some outstanding things for us. Won us some important games, like that game against Penrith in 22, I think it was, the one we played out at Penrith, I think it was. On the bell, he finds Gufferson wide left with a great step and a pass. So he did some really good things as an Eel. Didn't realise his full potential, I suppose, because of all the head knocks and whatnot, but still to get to a State of Origin game, win a premiership with the Roosters, and then could have won one with the Parramatta Eels. It's a pretty good career, all things said and done.
Yeah, he was a 5'8" coming through the pathways, and I remember talking to him at a fan day when he first became a member of the Eels full-time squad, and I'm thinking it was around about 2015 or 2016. No, it would have been 2015, I think. He came up from the lower grades. And I was talking to him and thinking, you have to be the biggest 5'8" I've ever seen.
John Sutton was there before him, but he's in the same mould. Yeah, big boy. And, And the thing of Ryan was, he looks like carved out of marble or granite, like the classic sort of Greek Adonis was always the nomenclature used to describe him. He's powerfully built and took great care of his body, which is the great irony in all this. For a man that took so much care of his body, the one thing you couldn't protect was the head knocks.
One thing I do want to give Ryan a shout out for was his work with the community. And I had the privilege of seeing him in action talking to a group of school students at Old Sale Yards one day. And they were high school students, and he made sure that he got all of their, just the way that he spoke to them. I mean, he made sure he got all of their attention before he even started off. And then he spoke to them about setting goals for themselves, and I won't go into the details of that conversation, other than at the end of it, he said, I'll be leaving my phone number with your teacher. If any of you need to talk through situations you're going through or anything like that, don't hesitate to speak to your teacher, and I'm more than happy to have a chat with you, in dealing with whatever you're going through. So
it's a great reminder that we live vicariously through a little pinhole into the inside of these guys' lives, and the girls now that the NRLW is high and flying, and for all of the love you can have for a player or the vitriol you can have for a player because they do or do not do the right thing on the perception of fans. It's a reminder that they can do good and bad away from the field. And in Ryan's case, like you said, Craig, he's done a lot of good in that regard, been a great mentor for a lot of young people that have come through Kellyville in various groups and clusters over the years. And I know among my mates, they give him a bit of stick because he does the full social media influencer thing on Instagram, and I think that's where he's looking to pivot. But he's got a fantastic mindset when he comes to talking to people in that regard. So very interested to see what he does, because I think social media influence is obviously going to be where he falls into quite naturally. But I could see him doing the corporate motivational scene, doing a lot of speaking and whatnot. And again, as I always harp on about, Craig, I will never begrudge a player for choosing their long-term wealth and health of mind when it comes to these kind of things. Because the more you learn about concussions, obviously the scarier it is, and how it's essentially leading to early onset dementia. Like not necessarily one-to-one, but the symptoms manifest in a similar way. It's pretty serious stuff. So, yeah, he goes out a premiership winner, and could have been a 2-time premiership winner if we just, things have fallen a bit differently in 22, but the Eels ran into the buzzsaw that was the height of the dynasty Penrith Panthers. And unfortunately, that sliding doors moment changes a lot of perceptions and stories when it comes to the blue and gold.
Yeah, it certainly does. John, just now on a football, onto football matters, Jezaiah Funa Iuta, or
just
now
Jezaiah
it's just
Funa
seems to be Jezaiah Funa now. So unlucky last week that his scheduled debut at home in front of all friends and family was, unfortunately, it was hijacked by the injury that occurred, the HIA that had to happen for Arpa Twiddle, which then meant that the Eels had to activate Sean Russell from the bench, who was there in case of a backline injury. And he then became the fourth player used rather than Jezaiah. So I think Jezaiah didn't get his debut last week, but he is named again this week to head up to Queensland to make his debut. And I think there'll be family travelling up there this week. It must have felt odd having the Polynesian wreaths that were there, that they get made for them for special occasions like that. And Jezaiah was sporting them after the game, but he didn't get to go on the field. So, look, I guess it's one of those things. It's just like when you look back, Arpa didn't get the celebrated moment because he came onto the field under those sorts of circumstances. He wasn't expected to make his debut. He didn't go through the presentations and all of that prior to his game. So it just shows gets the fate. Yeah, one guy gets to be fated twice, and one guy doesn't get it at all. Look, the circumstances there are obviously incredibly unfortunate. It's funny because I think Jason Rolls learnt from one faux pas the week before where we didn't have the emergency back in the 6-man bench, which I just think you have to have one, right? It's just that is the whole point of having the 6-man bench. You need to be able to cover every contingency or as many contingencies as possible. I will say he learned from one faux pas. I think he might have committed another. I didn't think Dylan Walker needed to be thrown to the game coming out of the sheds at halftime. I thought that the third activation of that bench could have been saved, which still would have got Jezaiah in there. But obviously that's the benefit of hindsight, and you get to be the super coach with the benefit of the 2020 vision there. But well, John, can I just say as well, if he didn't use Sean Russell, would we have scored that try from the big pass from Junior?
No. But yeah, in my sliding doors moment, I wouldn't have played Dylan Walker. I would have kept that spot open, and then Sean Russell could have come in later. But you're right. The way you talk about sliding doors and the sort of the branching routes of possibilities, and if Walker doesn't play and then get injured with his wrist, do the Eels tread the same path that leads to him scoring the outrageous 32-30 victory? That includes the legendary Junior Barlaw cutout, which, as you've mentioned, Craig, has already been canvassed to us to be part of the intro moving into next season, which I suppose Penning Junior's future could be contingent on it, but you know what? It might be that good of a slice of history for the Eels in present day that it might be there anyway. But yeah, I'd expect him to play because obviously the game plan was for him to play against the Cowboys, Craig, in terms of Jezaiah. And maybe he'll be that much more motivated, even more than his normal debut. It'd be interesting because will he have less nerves this week because he went through all the pre-game and in-game nerves and flutters, but then had the rug pulled out from underneath him, not for any fault of his own. Now he heads up to Suncorp against the high-flying Dolphins. Has he got a different mindset? I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see for him.
I think he plays in front of a bigger crowd this week.
Yeah. Yeah,
well,
the Dolphins. The Dolphins surely getting 30,000 plus to Suncorp. Surely, like
for this week, they have to.
Yeah,
they have to. They're zeroing in on a top 4 finish, and they are an exciting team to watch. So you'd have to think that there's, apart from their games against the Broncos at Suncorp, that there's a chance that this is one of their bigger crowds that they will get to a non-Broncos, non-Queensland opponent matchup there. John, just before we get into looking at Team List Tuesday, are there any questions or any comments from chat that we can address now before we go into the injury list and Team List Tuesday?
Yeah, a bit of sympathy for obviously Jezaiah's situation there. Phil mentioning a good shout out there that Matto and his brother Dean, who another Eels pathways player one time that had a bit of success out at Manly Way, formed the Meraki Disability Support Program as their charity. So that's a good shout out there, and obviously a reflection of the work that they're both doing off the field. Some people mentioning some of their big moments, making Corey Horsburgh cry. That was a classic out at Parramatta Stadium or Combank Stadium back then. And James saying Parramatta was so good to watch. And Diggity saying the biggest arms in the NRL. He'd be up there. He got some pythons. He, like I said, the great irony for Ryan is that I don't think there's been a player that takes more care of their body. Like you watch him and how he manages his body and all his off-season workouts, not pre-season, off-season workouts. And he took incredible care to treat his body like a temple. But like I said, you can't protect the same way against the concussion. So,
in fact, he spoke about that with the high school students when he was talking about goal setting, and he said something along the lines of he had to make a decision very early on about the goals for the goals he was setting himself in sport in rugby league, that something as simple as what he would eat had to become a discipline for him at a young age. And everything that he consumed, he would make a decision about whether it would be a benefit or not to his goal of being a professional athlete. So he had to be really disciplined in that regard. And I guess if you get a frame like that, it comes from having that level of discipline about not just what you consume, but the work that you put into your physical preparation. So, he lived according to his goals in that regard. Any other?
Got some comments to quickly run through. Gabby loved
Yep.
Goal's statement in one of his posts for us, saying 10,000 Broncos fans and 35,000 non-Broncos fans up in Brisbane.
Yes.
Yeah, but Sammy, who's got a couple of questions that follow up, does mention the Eels have a great support base up in Queensland. That is true. Eels are always well represented up there. I think maybe second to the Warriors, who seem to have incredible numbers everywhere. All the either expat or second and third generation Kiwis really turning up in numbers this year for their WARs high flying. But
John, one of the things about the Eels fans up at Suncorp is that you will hear that para chant
through the TV.
broadcast.
They pump it out there. They're great. Huge effort. Yeah.
Yeah.
Owen's got a fair question on the roster, which we'll talk about. We'll answer now, Owen, but we were going to talk about it anyway. But he says, do you think that Saxon should be starting over Jack de Belin? My answer is yes. I think this is the time. You guys know by now that at this time of the year when we're out of the running, I am all for development over results as a process. And maybe there's going to be a late change there this week that will do the same or facilitate this similar sort of move. I was a little bit surprised to see Saxon reverting back to the bench though this week, Craig.
Yeah, I must admit I was too, John. Interesting to see that we have Ryder Tuilagi.
Extended roster, yeah, that's probably
on the
a
extended
nod to
roster.
a potential look in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and when we get to it for Team List Tuesday, another selection decision which was taking the path that you were hoping that the team would take in terms of a young player being asked to step up to open age group there. So, we will get to that in the team list. But, I think Saxon has his last 2 weeks his form has been like we were impressed when Saxon made his debut and what he was able to produce, but it also wasn't a surprise when he was moved back down, because you see that with a lot of young players. They get their little taste of NRL and then the coaches put them back down again because they don't want to overburden them with the demands of playing week in, week out straight away. Now, in Saxon's second little stint up in the NRL, I think he's performed like at a level way above what he produced in his first stint. There was nothing wrong with what he produced in his first stint as a rookie, but he really looked like he belonged the last couple of weeks.
Yep. And I think that's been a case of nice management from the club, from the coach, Jason Riles and whatnot. So, but in saying that, I'd also like to see him starting this week against the Dolphins. So definitely something to monitor heading into the weekend, and obviously going to be part of both the Team West discussion later and the preview podcast on Thursday. But in a similar vein, Shano's asking, I think you're asking, Shane, how many players do we have signed for 2027? I can tell you on my spreadsheet, I have us down for 24 players signed right now, but that is pending the Junior Barlaw situation. Does he stay in Eel? That would make it 25. Saxon Pryke, I haven't got down as a top 30 player for next year, Craig. And I think Ryder will be top 30. I'm not sure if he is, but I think he will be top 30. If he is, that's another player to put on the list there. So the Eels have less spots available than you'd think, potentially, based on giving Saxon an upgrade to the top 30 next year, and if Ryder transitions to a top 30 contract, which I think he does, but I'm not 100% on that one. And
that also would be if there wasn't any unexpected departures.
Yes, and
as well,
that's
like
right.
if the club parts ways with any players.
Exactly. So there's obviously those things to be juggled around there, because as we've seen with other clubs this year, players can leave very quickly, and the Eels certainly aren't immune from that too. And then Sammy had a two-part question. And the first part was, and this is I will address this directly as a room that seems to have gotten a life of its own. He's saying, why do some fans keep talking about big review? Is that what led to the CEO change? What has happened here is that the club does an annual review every year. As best I can tell is what's happened, Craig. You might have better insight. The club does an annual review every year on performance, good or bad. And obviously in the last couple of years, it's been heavily towards the negative side. And they always do the review. And somehow that's been spun into it being a special review this year. I don't think there's any special review going on. And it's certainly not in any connection to the CEO standing down. But he then asked before that, where was your other question, Sammy? There it is. And then one of the popular questions that keeps coming to us is, when will 2027 signings be announced? I don't know. I wish I had an answer. I really wish I had an answer. Again, the Eels have been linked to a few players pretty consistently. Jack Howarth and Spencer Lynn, the two names that keep coming up along the mainstream media. I don't know.
Here's the frustrating thing about a lot of things with Parramatta is the Eels aim to do the right thing with a lot of their work around recruitment, retention. When I say the right thing, what I mean is not leaking in terms of who they're talking to, how negotiations are going, those sorts of things. If they make a signing and for example, there might be a level of confidentiality that's been asked for in terms of any announcements or what have you, the Eels will be very, very good around that. So if there's been any signings that have been done, and I would have the suspicion that there is, then for mine, the Eels are just going down the path that they have for probably the last 8 years or so, 8 to 10 years, which is they don't put it out there, and because of doing the right thing in terms of keeping confidentialities. Now, as a fan, that's incredibly frustrating because you want the leaks to be there. Like you
well,
want
at least some leagues. Obviously, you don't want to be a sieve,
we don't want the leagues to be there. We want to know, as supporters, that we really do want to know, and at some stage it may get out, because what ends up happening, and this is what we found to be true as a website, is that you end up starting to get mail from outside the club. And it's things like players, the family of players, the friends of players, people who know the agents of players, the people associated with the club that the players have come from. It starts to leak. So you just start to get a trickle of information. And as... you can't look. I couldn't tell you how many rumours that we receive in terms of sheer numbers, because there just is a lot of rumours that we get sent, and it's like the players that get linked with Parramatta. It's astounding how many get linked with Parramatta, as well as the players that are rumoured to be unhappy or what have you, and. To be fair, close to 99% of those rumours don't end up being correct. So it's why we don't touch on a lot of them. And even when we think that something is almost a lock-in or is going to be true, we get burnt. So, for example, we look at the Lockie Galvin scenario. That was... And that wasn't a problem with the source that we got it from. It was that it was just this sudden backflip, where the whole way, every bit of mail that we were getting, and it was from before, long before it came out into the media, it started with the mail that we were getting. And to an extent as well, it looks like being the case maybe with Junior, because he was locked up for Perth. And whether he still leaves Parramatta, or whether he re-signs with Parramatta, what it looks like right now is that every bit of the strong mail about him going to Perth looks to be completely wrong. And what we thought was a certainty, as being as close to across the line as it could possibly get, such was the strength of the mail, we're going to be wrong again. And as I said, that's where we maybe touch 1% of the mail that comes our way. So you can imagine what's out there at the moment. It's why we don't like to touch certain things that are seem to be getting a life of their own, like the one we don't want to touch on tonight, for example. So that's where we're at. We wish we could say we knew that certain players were coming. There's players, it's been rumoured that it's where there's a very strong link between Parramatta and certain players. And let's say it, it's a very strong link there that's been there with Spencer Leniu, a very strong link that's been there with Howarth from Melbourne, a minor link there with Burton at the Bulldogs. So all of those things are floating around, but have we got anything definitive where we could say, look, we know this one's probably done? Not enough that we could say, yeah, look, expect that person there, or it's going to be announced then. I said months ago, I didn't expect any announcements as such until either the end of the season, or like the regular season, or the end of the season for certain clubs. So basically Parramatta's off-season as such, like the final series.
And the reality is that with a new CEO incoming, depending on who it is, and obviously the Eels being linked to a couple of Camerons, Matt Cameron out Penrith Way, and then Cameron George, right? The Warriors CEO, the two candidates leading there. You might see a change in methodology for the Parramatta Eels moving forwards in regards to how they recruit, both through the media and in their general practices. But yeah, as it stands right now, with what we have to work with right now, we've got nothing concrete. Obviously, there's been those players who've been linked to, like you said, Craig, and in particular, Leniu and Howe seem to be the two that have come across the desk a few times via the media. But obviously, Burton's a player that his situation seems to be pretty up in the air out at Canterbury, and there's been a link at one point, I think, there between us and him. So we're apparently trying to juggle a few balls, but as it stands, we have to be patient. And it sucks to say that, because even from someone like me who's incredibly patient when it comes to the Eels, we need results. Like in terms of recruitment, we need results. And the reverse of that too is that there are in-house things they could be announcing that they don't seem to be announcing. Like there's got to be retentions that they can be putting out there that they're not. So I'm not really sure if the plan is just to save it to end of season and then dump a whole lot of good news, both recruitment and retention-wise, on both fronts there. I don't know. But it does suck to tell fans to be patient, because that's all you can be right now. And like I said, one way or the other, with a new CEO coming in, you're going to see a change in methodology, I would guess. Some like the CEO will bring their what's the word I'm looking for? Like not just methodology, but their mannerisms to recruitment to the table, which might end up changing the Eels significantly. I don't know, but it's tough right now, because it's Phil. There was a rumor going around on Twitter X about Shane Flanagan as an assistant coach, but I don't know how concrete that is. I wouldn't be all for that at all. I think we saw this year that Flanagan's pretty deeply out of touch with the modern product in the NRL. But I don't know if you'll talk about that shortly, Craig. But in terms of the signings, just got to hold position and hope that the Eels get a couple of big additions, or even good additions to the roster for next year.
That'll be back to the future with Shane Flanagan, because I think it was when Brian Smith was at the club that Shane Flanagan was an assistant coach at the Eels.
Yes.
Lower grade
So.
coach.
Yeah.
Look.
It's a Paul Kent rumour. That's right, Phil. Yeah, thanks for that, mate. Yeah, it was a Kenty rumour. Who has been a little bit off the mark with Parramatta in recent times. I think he was linking us to, was it Moses Sully he linked us to strongly, and that didn't eventuate. So his mail hasn't been 100% with the Eels. Just water, Shane. There's nothing fancy in my mug tonight. I did have a beer for dinner, though. A bit of beer and dumplings. But water in the mug.
And what was the beer, John?
I got nothing fancy. I had Crown Lagers on sale at Dan Murphy's a couple of weeks back. So very slowly working through those, and my cousins when they come over to watch the football. But
I thought maybe you were going to give some advice, dining advice about with this particular meal goes particular beer.
A particular brew of IPA or something like that. No,
no.
I don't mind drinking different kinds of beers, and I'll do some fancy craft beers every now and then. But when it comes to stuff like dinner beers and whatnot, it's whatever's on sale at Dan Murphy's. So.
Okay, so it really is a crazy situation with the rumours, and I can assure you as well that I've had people telling me 100% on those players that we mentioned in the rumours that it's 100% they're done, it's coming, but again, that's not anyone who is closely linked to the Eels where I could say, look, I feel really, really confident about this. It's just an example of what we get in the way of rumours when you have... Look, this is just the way it is. If you have a platform, people tend to get in touch with you to let you know these things in much the same way as journos scan.
And that's the thing is that, from our context, there are a lot of people that are really keen to see if there's any validity to a rim when they've heard it. So they'll reach out to you and say, hey, 60s, have you heard about this? Is there anything to it? And sometimes those rumours start getting a life of their own. And it is crazy to see, again, harkening back to what happened to Dylan Walker, how quickly a rumour can get out of control and start doing serious potential harm to a player's reputation. Obviously, with the signing stuff, it's not negative like that. But sometimes signings rumours get a life of their own too, and you'll have something come through. It's like, well, whether it's the Eels or any club, like, Tigers, Panthers, or Rabbitohs, they've been linked to this player, and there's nothing there in reality, but it's done enough rounds of telephone through the social media siphon and funnel that it becomes a concentrated rumour at some point.
Yeah. Any other questions, John, before we push on with the injury list and team list Tuesday?
No, let's get going, because there'll be more questions throughout the pod to throw to every now and then. So let's get into TLT. And we've got a couple of interesting things for the Eels here in regards to their various team lists going into what is round 25 in the NRL, round 8 in the NRLW, and then what do we got in lower grades? Round 10 in the Women's Premiership. Good Lord, I got there. So, starting from the top with the NRL, Eels taking on the Dolphins, Craig. Largely unchanged.
Maybe run through that injury list first, because I think that gives us a
only minor action on the injury report this week, thankfully, which is a rarity for the Eels in season 26. The bad news: Dylan Walker picked up a wrist injury in that game against the Cowboys. He's got a 1 to 2 week designation, so remains to be seen if he's played his last game as an Eel, pending the outcome of the healing factor for Dill there on his wrist. But obviously you'd hope that he can maybe get a farewell game against the Sharks next week, but that'll be pending his availability. The good news is that a long occupier of a slot on my injury report table, Bailey Simonson, finally cleared to return via New South Wales Cup this week. So big one there for Bailey. He had a really nasty break and dislocation of his ankle way back on Easter Monday. Real nasty work there for him, and he's battled really hard to get back to this position, and now gets a chance to maybe enter the 26-27 preseason with a bit of momentum on the field, and he'll be playing on the flank for the Eels in reserve grade.
Yeah, so we're going to close out the last few weeks with already the 6 players that we know will not be seen this year, and potentially might include as well Dylan Walker, depending on...
Well, technically it's more than 6. It's you've got Gaima, Hopgood, Dory, Yongi, Tuivati, Penasini, Latu, who doesn't feature on the injury report for some reason, but has been out most of the season. I don't see him anywhere in terms of injuries, so I'm not sure he picked up a suspension, but Jake Tungle not named this week, and I'm not sure if he's injured or suspended.
Yeah, good point there. So it's it could actually, it is a bigger list than what we have there. The Eels are going to end up, I guess I haven't seen that latest tally from NRL Physio and the other person that he collabs with for that injury tally for the season.
I think Physio's report doesn't account for Willatu as well, because he's not on the injury report. So the Eels are another 20 games short of what their actual injury tally is. It only counts for the players that feature on there. And I think he might be doing Ryan Matterson because he's a top 30 player, but Will's part of our top roster as well. So, yeah, the Eels are dominating one ladder at least. So we got that going for us. But in terms of the NRL team list, Craig, largely the same as the team that triumphed against the Cowboys, and that's not a surprise. Coaches do like to run it back with successful rosters, but the same 1 to 7, which means Twiddle at fullback. You got Kelly and Adokar on the flanks, Penasini and Samrani in the centres. Volkman will partner Moses in the halves again. Bit of Ronald Volkman talk on NRL 360, Craig. They were trying to link him to Brave was trying to link him to the Bulldogs, so that might be a possible destination for Volkman should he want to vie for a starting gig at another club. Front row, unchanged with Meridian, Barlaw and De Silva there as your 8, 9 and 10. Jack DeBellin does come back into the starting team. We mentioned it earlier in the podcast. A little disappointed to see that, honestly. I know DeBellin's done an okay job for us, but at this point in the season, I would prefer Saxon Pryke to be starting there, or even Harrison Edwards. Just a guy that's going to be part of the picture for next year, you'd think. Speaking of Edwards and Pryke, they're on the bench. They're joined there by Tiankan Brown, Jezaiah Funa, Sean Russell, and Kelma Tuilagi. Extended roster, Araz Namba, Ryder Tuilagi, which you mentioned is a great inclusion there. Maybe a nod towards a potential debut in the last 2 games beyond this week. And then Riley Smith rounding out your optional bench there, or the extended optional bench there for the reserves. Eels heading up to play in Brisbane on Friday. Well, they're playing on Friday. I imagine they'll be probably heading up on Thursday, Greg. And there'll be a couple of players in this list that might drop back to Cup that aren't named there right now.
Yep. So now we move to the NRLW injury list and team list.
Yeah, NRLW, in terms of their injury report, they do lose Lindsay Tui for the season. It looks like a syndesmosis injury, ankle sprain or high ankle sprain there for young Tui, which is really unfortunate, but that'll rule her out. Because even at best case, syndesmosis tends to be, and I mean really best case, is like a couple of weeks. And most syndesmosis injuries, it feels like these days, Craig, probably are closer to 2 months. So it's going to be a bit of a
hip drop from memory?
Yes,
that was
I believe it was a hip drop, yeah. Meanwhile, Kennedy Charrington still on the injury report, but I think I saw on socials that she's been cleared to return, although she's not been named anywhere this week. So maybe cleared to return. So
she won't be playing.
Cleared to return, next week. But The Eels, in terms of the actual team list, they've had to reshuffle their back line in light of the Tui injury. So Jasmine Morrissey moves into the centres this week. She's been playing wing for the Eels in the last couple of games. Zoe Fay will replace her in that vacant wing position. Otherwise, it's the same 1 to 7 we've been pretty used to in recent weeks. In the front row, you're going to have Albert and Kapua working together once again with Tanika Todd-Hunter at number 9. Back row is Tafunga, Murphy and Joseph, so not too many changes in that starting team, who had their breakthrough win against the Bulldogs, which is really good to see. Lane Morgan, really solid in debut, Craig. She's going to be the sole utility player on the bench, which is a configuration I really like. I'm very, very happy with that one. She's joined by returning concussion-free players Riverley, Arlo and Chloe Jackson, so nice injections onto the bench there. Kylie Gray rounds out a pretty young bench otherwise. And then the extended roster, Hertigan, McWilliams, Charrington, which is Ruben Charrington, Ginn and Fallon. So the Eels, they're taking on the Cronulla Sharks this year. They're both true technically, but who cares about, fine chronological details. But yeah, the Sharks, they're not doing too well this season either, Craig. I didn't realise it, but they're only at 1 win as well. So this is a game that may or may not decide the wooden spoon. Or at least
an early spoon bowl.
Yeah, it could be an early leg of the spoon bowl or bowls. So the Eels have a chance to get one on the Sharks out there at, what are they called these days? Ocean Protect on Sunday night.
Yeah. Okay. So now we go to the New South Wales Cup and an interesting selection or two in this.
Yeah, so the Eels, they battled hard against the Bears on the weekend, Craig. They didn't play their best football, but they stayed in the fight for the entire game. So went down by, 8 points in the end? I thought they didn't do a discredit to themselves in that one. The Bears obviously a very well-rounded team, and the Eels hung in there for 80 minutes. So got the loss, but I thought they went down with a bit of respect to their name there. And this week there's a few changes. But at the back line, we're talking about the reintroductions of Siamani Leilui at centre, and obviously Bailey Simonson onto that wing. Tungall's out of the team this week, and I'm trying to think who did Leilua replace in the centres. Because the Eels had Tyrese Lakini playing centre last week. So there was a bit of a...
Yeah, it was a late omission of Sean Russell.
Yeah, so the Eels weren't playing for, not fully stacked, but like properly aligned deck in that game. They still managed to compete, although that edge did get taken to task a little bit. But that's, not Lakini's fault there being a back row forced to play centre. Jonah Pezzett's back from the shoulder injury that saw him miss a couple of games, and he'll partner Lorenzo Talatona in the halves. Not the biggest fan there, Craig. I think, again, harkening back to the talk of development, I think that Lincoln Fletcher probably is a better bet there for the Eels in terms of getting him some more reps in open age football, but it is what it is. There is some good payoff there in the back row because while we have a usual front row candidates of Talangi, Smith and Matteoli, you've got Chris Petrus back up in this grade, and he'll be on the opposite side of Tyrese Lakini with Max Tupou at lock forward. So Petrus getting another shot at open age football here. He's had a little bit of a taste earlier this season, and he had some stuff to work on, Craig, so I'm interested to see how he approaches it this time. Defensively, he had some issues dealing with the strength of the opposition, but that's why you give them these little bursts up in the higher grades so they can learn. Then on the bench, you've got Cruz Natili Schmidt, Bruce Ward, Pathways player from a few years back for the Eels, Marcus Offenoa and Jordan Hill. And again, this team plays on Saturday, and I wouldn't be surprised to see a few guys either red-eyeing or flying down in the morning from Brisbane to be part of this game, the likes of Kelma Tuilagi, and I guess if no injury, Sean Russell could play in the Cup game as well.
Yeah, big surprise seeing Bruce Ward there, as you said. Pathways player from a few years back. I think at the start of last year, the year that Cabramatta withdrew early in the season from Ron Massey and Sydney Shield.
2 years ago?
I've got a feeling it was.
Yeah.
I got a feeling it was last year, not this year. Anyway, he was part of the Cabramatta team back then, and I think he'd either been running around for Wright Eastwood or the Dirty Reds in Ron Massey or Sydney Shield or anyway. So, yeah, and certainly what you'd say a journeyman after his time with the Eels in Pathways football. So congrats to Bruce Ward, seeing him actually at the second tier again of rugby league in the New South Wales Cup. So
Mario,
interesting selection.
Bruce has been playing for Wenty this year, so there's obviously a tangential connection there for the Eels. as part of that,
Yes,
that loose
there you go.
formation they have. Yeah, so but yeah,
Okay. There you go.
always. I mean, he might be one of the players to make way if there is a reshuffle based on those surplus NRL players coming back, Craig. But fair enough for Bruce to be in that position to play this week. Although, again, it's contingent on who backs up or doesn't play in the NRL.
Yep. So, John, now we go to the New South Wales Women's Premiership. We're going to gradually get that right without error, aren't we?
You're close to it.
Give a sponsor name to it.
Shane's asking where Cup is. They're currently 12th on the ladder, so not doing too flash this season. But it's funny they're not that far outside the top 8, but they're also a long way from it. It feels like so. Mind you, they flashed between really surprising strong performances and the complete atrocious performance. Yeah, so they're 7 wins, 1 draw, 12 losses. If they can get a couple more wins before the season closes out, they won't get the parity, but they'll inch towards a better win-loss split. But in saying that, for all their troubles, they're not Manly, who are 1 win, 19 losses, and I think that's like 19 on the trot as well, or something like that. They're absolutely abysmal this year. You could be worse than Parramatta, which I suppose is a small blessing. But Women's Premiership, Craig, like you said, we're getting closer to not screwing up the badging of that competition. It's funny, it's only a couple of years, but when you have the Harvey Norman's Women's Premiership for a couple of years, you just see it into your mind because that's what it was as the inception competition. But now it's just the New South Wales Women's Premiership, NSWWP. And the Eels, they look like this. Carlisle at fullback, you got Liga and Crichton Party on the wings. Billy Va'a on the centres this week, Craig. That's a nice inclusion there for a very handy pathways player this year. I think Billy was one of the Eels' best in the Tasha Gale, so well done to her for getting the promotion to Women's Premiership. Interesting halves pairing this week, Fleur Ginn and Jade Hertigan. That bumps Aaliyah Sufan to the bench as the utility. Beyond that, some big inclusions in terms of NRLW experience. Tess McWilliams and Ruben Cherrington will play in the front row. Otherwise, it's an unchanged back row of Lenars, Fallon and Kennedy there. On the bench, I mentioned it's Sufan, but also Tess Staines, Laura Kame and Ava Jones. Cody Tuamasevi is the 18th player there.
Yeah, and they just had a really tough encounter with Newcastle, who sit at the top of the women's premiership table. The loss probably delivered the death knell to their finals hopes, because they're now on the negative side of the ledger in terms of wins and losses.
Yep.
Had their chances this year, just haven't been able to
invariably
ice
front runners in every game. Like not every game, but in most games. And just like we said, couldn't ice a few of those important ones, and the opposition stay in the contest and were made to be punished for it. So a lot of teachable moments for a very young team, and that is worth considering too, that this is essentially a pathways team for the Eels this year. A couple of more senior players, but they have a lot of young players in there.
And finally, we've got the Jersey Flegg team, who are fresh back from a trip to Fiji and a disappointing draw against the Silktails.
I still can't believe that's a real result. 8-all in the Jersey Flegg, let alone going to Fiji. So yeah, Eels definitely let one slide there, unfortunately, but they've got some changes this week. A debut that I've been looking forward to for a while, actually, Craig. A player that was very good in the SG ball and has been carving up in the lower grades in Sydney Shield, I think it is. But on the wing this week, Samuel Sorovi, prospectively making his Flegg debut there. So well done to Samuel. I thought he was very good in ball.
I think he's played one other game. He has played a game earlier this season.
Has he? Or was it maybe
yes.
When the bye was there for the ball, maybe?
Yeah, I can't remember exactly when, but I am near 100% that he has played earlier this season.
Our good mate
only
Ham,
one game.
Ham seems to think it was a debut, so I usually defer to him when it comes to these kind of things. Even though we're deeply immersed in the juniors, he's a little bit more on the ball than us usually. So if it's not a debut, I apologise. If it is a debut, we'll celebrate nonetheless. But his inclusion bumps Devonta Vavella off the flank and into the centres. Harley Walker returns from a one-game suspension to start in the centres opposite of Vivella. And then another player I haven't seen for a while, Jeshua Martin Nelson, will be on the other flank this week. And I'm not sure what Jeshua's situation was, whether it was a long-term injury, but he is back this week. In the halves, Cade Mujali will partner Lincoln Fletcher. Lucian Koinakis and Salmaki, your front rowers. Trace Beattie, the Queensland Origin legend TBA, and Sterling Farmui in the back row. So I have to wait and see who the Eels play in that starting back row slot. But dropping back from Cup is Elijah Shane Tapa'u. He's joined by Callum McMenemy and Jordan Miller on the... Am I get that right? Let me just double check that. There was only 2 players on the bench, so maybe I've butchered that one there. Where is this one here? Let me just see if they've updated the team list. Eels taking on the Raiders. It is, just Elijah Shane and Jordan Miller on the bench. I'm not really sure why I got Callum there. That was a bit of a faux pas from me. And then there's 2 TBAs to fill out on the bench there. So the Eels missing 3 players from their top 17 this week, and that's going to be something that will obviously be updated on game day because we don't get those midweek updates to the team lists on the game portal anymore, which is unfortunate. But Eels, a few holes to fill there.
Yeah, just a few, and we'll of course maybe be in a better position to discuss that when it comes to the preview podcast. John, just some final takes on last weekend to wrap up the Eels segment of the news podcast. First of all, NRLW getting their first win. That's it was something we'd spoke about in the preview podcast because the Eels had previously defeated the Bulldogs in the NRLW trial in their preseason, and on the basis of that, they looked like they were heading for a really strong season because I think from memory it was like 36-6 the score in that game, and the Eels dominated in every aspect of the game. And then lo and behold, we get into the season proper, and I think the Dogs had put together 3 wins before last weekend. The Eels 0. But as you know from in the preview podcast, I was really bullish about the Eels being able to get a win in this game. And although I was wondering if I was ultimately the jinx with the team because we'd had to we were involved with the pre-game appearance in the Leagues Club with Steve Ella and Dave Lydiard, and by the time I marched over to the stadium, I walked in, it was 24-0 to the Eels. Within 10 minutes of me walking in, it was 24-18, and things looked like they were heading south very, very quickly. But then Abby Church does Abby Church things and scores that near length of the field try in gathering a Bulldogs attacking kick and as I said, just about going the distance to score that try, which
the game was at a crossroads there, and then Abby, she refused to lose and really took it upon herself to put that game beyond doubt. And look, plenty of credit to the girls, Craig. There was some luck there for a couple of sin bins against the Bulldogs that helped pave the way for the Eels to be a little bit more dominant through the middle than they have been this season. But you can only play what's in front of you, and they were given the opportunity to take a lead, and they took it. And they haven't been able to do that this year. There's been opportunities in other games where they've had runs of possession or chances to either get ahead or level games and turn it back to a 0-0 game ostensibly, and they haven't done it. But on the weekend they did. And we saw some great football from a number of players. Mahali Murphy with her best game of the season by miles. And as I mentioned in the reaction podcast, Craig, it can't just be a one-off there. It needs to be built on here, not just for Mahalia, but for the team. But she was very good. Cassie Toihiku looked confident. We haven't seen that this year. She really backed herself in this game, and it made a marked difference in her ability to take on the line. Really good signs in that game. I'm glad they were able to get that gorilla off their back there, because going through a season winless is not, even in an abbreviated season like the NRLW, it's not a record you want to have. It's a real piece of ignominy when it comes to the NRL and NRLW across multiple seasons or the historical seasons. So they did really well, and I just want to see them build on it now. And Cronulla are such, we'll talk about it in the preview podcast, but they're a beatable team. Like the Sharks are not playing good football, so they've got a chance to go back-to-back here, which would be a massive shot in the arm for them. Regardless of all the talk with the spoon and whatnot, just to make back-to-back wins would be huge for their confidence. And credit to them for getting the job done, because this presented as a winnable game and one of their few winnable games this season in the long view of their form. And they put things in the right positions in that one, and hopefully they can learn from it. Yep.
John, the NRL game, I thought it was a game where the high completions from both teams asked questions of defences that weren't exactly on song anyway, but having full completed sets certainly allowed each team to add a little bit of pressure on the defence. For the most part, the defences didn't hold up that well. That's why you end up with a scoreline of 32-30 in this match. But the things to like about this was Moses really standing up as the senior elite player, and not that he hadn't been standing up, but the performances this season from the team as a whole, I don't know whether the circumstances were or weren't right for us to see the best of Mitch Moses as that senior elite player. Could be argued that, well, the ball's in his court to really steer the team around a little bit better. But the one thing you can never, ever question about Mitch Moses is his desire to win. And that was on full display in this game. I don't think you'd ever see a player more dialed in than what he was in the contest. And he got the 3 points for most of a large number of our viewers in chat in the instant reaction. Another player that polled well, of course, was Junior Paulo. I thought he provided big moments in the game, whether it be those defence moments or that insane pass that led to the try by Jordan Samrani. As someone said, it's the most remarkable pass that doesn't end up in getting a credit for a try assist.
You do see the try involvements that pop every now and then, but that was a try assisting pass, wasn't it? I know that the final pass gets the credit, but that was what credited the try. So, and also thank you, Joel, for the $5. Who's no message there, mate, but much appreciated for the super chat there. If you have something you want to highlight, we can run it by you there. But thank you for the donation there. But we should. What we will look to organise as well is for the people that have been making those donations as well, and when we set up our systems there for people to be able to donate in a Patreon type manner. Actually, that reminds me. Can I do this here?
That we start adding a thank you to the podcast itself, a list of people that we want to thank for their financial donations to the podcast. So we really do appreciate it. John, the other names that were important to mention, I thought, were Brian Kelly again, who set the tone for the game with that long break from the kickoff. The Cowboys waiting for him to pass to a middle forward, and instead he just takes the line on himself. A quick step of evasiveness, and he's into the backfield, and then beating another 2 or 3 defenders trying to take him down. His consistency of performance of either topping the run meters or being very close to the top. He approached, I think, 300 run meters in this one. He just refuses to surrender. He does the dirty yards right down in the Eels' own red zone with carrying the ball into the teeth of the ruck, as much as he does maybe creating almost something out of nothing sometimes with the tries or the try assists or some sort of play that he'll put on to create a chance for a try. We saw the work that was done where Will Penasini couldn't quite finish it off on the weekend, but the one where Arpa Twiddle was able to finish it off. So those sorts of involvements from Brian Kelly.
What I love from BK was the circumspection on when it was the right time to pull the trigger or not to. Like on that opening run for the kickoff, he just took the tackle. And I know the Eels didn't score, but it was 100% the right play. But on the flip side, the vision, and I know that there's a lot of NRL wingers who are shockingly good at the short kick these days, but BK's got a great little kick in him. There was that one. Who was it against the? There was a borderline penalty try that he should have had earlier this season where he almost did the Kristen Inu, Mark Nwangani-Dawaze kick and get pushed out into touch and then get in there. He's had a deft little kick on him all season. And I know John, against South.
I have to give a shout out here because it's something that I see. The Eels outside backs work a lot with Scotty Wisemantle on that aspect of their game of having that short kicking game skill for just those sorts of situations.
You're going to get boxed and you get the ball.
You wouldn't credit like how exact some of those circumstances are to what they work on in their skills work as outside backs. Because if you go to an Eels training session and you see some of the skills work that they do, where they go off in their specialised positions and work in different things. And it can be things like, for example, with the outside backs, it might be things like taking the ball high AFL style above the pack. And you'll see, he hates it, you'll see Scott Wisemantle don what's called the turtle pad, which has the pad that goes right, it's an AFL type one, and it goes right up the back of the head. And it's shaped like a big turtle shell, and the players climb the back to take it AFL style, or what you see, because people need to understand wingers and outside backs that score those spectacular acrobatic tries where their body is completely out over the sideline, but they somehow get the ball down. All these wingers across all the clubs, they practice that sort of stuff. So you'll see them set up a gym mat beside the corner post, and the player will take a pass and come running in to try to ground the ball with someone with a pad belting them out over the sideline, and them somehow getting the ball down inside the corner post with their body at weird angles that have been where they've been, and they don't know how they're going to end up because they're getting bumped with a pad. So however their body ends up over the sideline, they've got to somehow get that ball down. So they practice these sorts of things. It would be happening right across the NRL, these things. They don't just happen. They actually train to be able to do it. So when you see, like, there is no one that I don't think comes close to Dallin Watini-Zalesniak for being able to do the almost impossible on a regular basis with the put downs. But players like that, it's a craft that they work at. It's a specialised skill for those positions. And as I said, it doesn't just happen. It's worked hard at.
It'll probably sail over the heads of a lot of younger members of the squad, but there are a few guys that are, Gen X crossovers there. Moses, Junior, Walker, DeBellin. When he's got the turtle pads on, surely some of them will run past him and ask him how Sensei Splinter's doing as the fifth member of the Ninja Turtles.
You'll have to give that to me so I can maybe ask the coach himself.
Like I said, it's so. I mean, I'm saying that the Turtles have been in the movies in the last few years, so maybe the younger generation would actually vibe with the old TMNT, the Heroes in a Half Shell, as it were. But yes, you can understand why he's not a fan of putting the shell on. But yeah, Mark's another one, Michael, who's very good at the finishing in the corner there. I mean, what is crazy is that the average NRL winger does stuff that we just take for granted as that's what a winger does, that 10, 15, 20 years ago would be like career highlight reels for anyone. And yet it happens on a weekly basis in NRL now. And it shows you how fast the code adapts, that wingers are now expected to do those kind of things, contort their bodies in absurd manners as a literal standard KPI for the position.
Yeah. And they're training for that all the way through pathways. So when they're getting to NRL, they're not just picking it up at NRL. They're working on those sorts of skills all the way through elite programs now.
I'm going to need context from Ross here, from Neil Ross, who's saying he got on a current affair in kindergarten because of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. We need context on that one. Yeah, I'm sorry. You can't leave that one hanging out there. I know we don't want to be rumor mongers, but you can't dangle that one in front of me. And I say, we got in trouble for hitting each other with sticks and somehow ACA. Oh, it was a slow week for current affair, I guess. So playing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and it somehow gets the investigative journalist down there. That's great.
So anyway, just quickly back to the game last weekend. I mentioned some of those players as well. I hadn't mentioned Tallis Da Silva. He was best on field for a number of people. I bumped him down just a bit because of the missed tackles.
Yep, yeah, and
without question, he is dynamic when he decides he's going to run the football. Riles said he wants him to run it more.
Yeah, he is scratching at the greatness that is unlocked in his own skill set right now. And you're just seeing elements of it almost on an almost weekly basis now. He is so dynamic when he jumps out of dummy half. And I think that's the big thing in the big picture for the Eels moving forwards. We need to generate more fast rucks for him and for Moses. But for him in particular, but also to allow Moses to do his magic. But the difference when he is ready to jump out of dummy half, it's genuinely electrifying. Like, he just has a burst that you don't see from maybe any other dummy half since like prime Damien Cook. Like, he's gone. But it's not consistent because, like you said, the coach is pointing out that he needs to find his opportunities more. And it doesn't mean just, running willy-nilly. But when he does, he's so damaging. And we saw that on the weekend with the two tries he scored. One a penalty try, of course, but the other one where he just powered over into the corner.
It's an interesting position that the Eels are in because I believe we have two quality and potentially very high quality dummy halves in both Riley Smith and Tallis Da Silva. Riley has got that workaholic, 1%er, like just clean everything up, ask questions, lead the defence line, kick pressure, all that sort of quality that he brings to his game. And then you've got talent and great service too. Then you've got talent who is possibly out on his own in the NRL in terms of that capacity for speed off the mark out of dummy half. So and thereby giving the Eels a quality that, as you pointed out, John, if we had quicker play the balls on a consistent basis, a real threat and that other teams don't possess.
Michael's saying that he's, mind you, he has a bit to work on, which is 100% true, and I agree. I'm saying he's scratching at the greatness he has, but that's coming with some very clear deficiencies in his game. And I think I've mentioned on the podcast in the past, because I always talk about my brother office when we're talking about the great players of gone, like recent and sort of years gone by. But Cameron Smith, who was pretty much indisputably, regardless of your stance on the Melbourne stuff, as a player, Cameron's probably the indisputable GOAT at dummy half. The longevity, the on-field command of both the team and the referees. What Cameron did that a lot of people don't talk about a lot, but what was a huge part of his kit bag was knowing when to take the shortcut, like the shortcut that doesn't hurt the team. He managed his load in the game, so he was always ready to make a tackle without being gassed. And he would make a lot of tackles, but he wouldn't make an absurd amount of tackles. He'd make a good amount of runs, but he wouldn't overexert himself running. And again, he'd read the game, how the game declared itself, and what the game required of him, more offense and more defense, and adjust his game accordingly. But he would know that the ball's gone to the right. I'm going to let the centre and the winger deal with that, ruck to get it back here, so I can be in position for tackle 4 to get the ball to the half for tackle 4 and 5. And that comes with experience. That knowing when to take the shortcut that doesn't hurt the team is a very much a learned thing, because coaches don't want you taking shortcuts by and large, right, Craig? It's just you don't take shortcuts. But as a dummy half, your workload is bigger than anyone else's. So you cannot be chasing every tackle, cannot be chasing every ruck. You need to know when to pace yourself, hence taking the right shortcuts. And I don't think he knows that right now. I don't think Riley knows that right now. I think they're both very young dummy halves that will learn by doing.
Yeah, so I guess what it comes down to is Cameron Smith looked like he always had a lot of time up his sleeve.
But because he knew when
he
the
never
game
looked rushed.
That's right. He knew when the game was going away from him, like in terms of like the ball going to the left edge or the right edge. So don't sprint 20 meters to chase the ruck because that's just going to burn all your energy for the entire set. But let the central winger deal with it and then pace yourself the next one. And likewise in defense. He was always a great defender, but he wouldn't overexert himself in defense. He'd make his tackles, but he wouldn't recklessly throw himself around because he knew he had to pace himself for 80 minutes. So I think that's a big part of the learning process for both dummy halves there. But yeah, Riley, you can see why Riles is trying to back him in and put confidence into him because there is genuinely elite tangibles to his game. The acceleration, the ability to tackle bust, even like some of the vision there. Like he's got good vision when he's locked in. But you also see him missing the tackles, not finding his marks on fifth tackle. Like he doesn't find Volkman or Moses with his initial pass and causes a delay in the processing there of the fifth tackle option. So really liked some of the stuff we saw against the Cowboys, but like you said, Greg, the defensive issues were quite apparent and justifiably why he got knocked down in some people's votes. But I also just think, I'm not really sure what the context is for the coach. I would like to see Riley and Talon working together again. I know Harrison Edwards is there as the back row utility dummy half option, but I would like to see Riley back in there and what they can do together as a battery there. But you've got to defer to the coach there. We're looking from the outside in. And I just want to say on Moses, Craig, because you were talking about him earlier prior to that line of thought with Talon. I think the game against the Cowboys was the first time I've seen him this year changing gears so smoothly with his acceleration. And we saw him make a couple of nice line breaks there and threaten the line consistently. So I don't know if that was a case of him finally getting over whatever has been lingering in his calves and his legs, but it felt like that was closer to prime Moses than we'd seen this year in terms of his ability to attack the line with confidence and that, again, sort of like what Talon brings, the electric pace, the acceleration.
Yeah, that was really well noted, John. Now, before we jump into the NRL news, and we just want to say as well that at the start of the NRL news, we are in a way going to be talking about Eels recruitment.
Yes,
in a roundabout way with the first cab off the rank.
Sport of back rowers that we could be talking about for the Eels.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So, any Eels questions that we want to finish off the Eels section?
Neil, fresh on the back of his awesome current affair story, is asking, he didn't get a chance to catch Cup, but how did Riley go? I thought Riley played all right. He found himself in the centres at one point again. It's been happening to him a couple of times now, with the Eels juggling that left centre spot in that game with Tyrese and Riley trying to make do on a late, well, not withdrawal because Sean Russell played the NRL, but the Eels didn't play a specials back in that position, which is a bit unfortunate. But I thought he did.
There is a rumour floating around, John, that he's thinking of changing his nickname to the Crow. But we'll just put that.
Yeah. Joel's asking, are we a legit chance against the Dolphins? We'll answer that question in the preview podcast. Tough game, though. No doubt about that. The Dolphins are a high-powered offense and have the home field advantage this week. But the Eels, they've been playing up to better opposition than recent weeks. So I almost feel more confident about playing a good game against a good opponent than against a mid-table opponent, which is a bit weird. But we got... and by the way, Talon de Silva, there was a comment earlier on the podcast by Jamie saying that he's taken the call and our leading try scorer, Tribrows, with Talon's very prominent eyebrows there, and the fact he hit double-digit tries for the Eels. So I said it wasn't a half bad nickname there. What else we got here before we move on to NRL news / Parramatta potential signing news? Well, sorry, not signing news, signing opportunities. I want to stress that it's not any connection there. This is us looking at what's on the market. We got Ducky saying that they love seeing Mitch running the ball again. Yeah, as with any great half, the run, kick, and pass, it's like the triangle of offense, right? Sort of like the 90s Bulls and the triangle offense there. But, you've got your little triangle of run, kick, and pass. The run is the most dangerous option because the person that has the ball is always the most dangerous player on the field. And that's where all great halves start. Generally speaking, foundationally, they start with a great running game. And Mitch, we know, has a great running game, but haven't seen it that much this year with the injuries. Joel saying that Riley was okay, but not standing out. Yeah, I think that was my vibe too, Joel, was that he played all right, but wasn't any means a standout there. But again, he was sort of bouncing around the field in that game there too. Jamie saying Mitch is playing at his home Suncorp. Yeah, well, he is a bit of a legend up at Suncorp, isn't he? Jamie saying that he thinks he hated the Tribrows badge. He's going to keep workshopping the phrase. I like the energy, Jamie. I love
it. Okay, so given that we can no longer have our musical interlude because of copyright issues on YouTube, we'll have to come up, John. I'm going to suggest to you that you come up with an NRL stinger that you can play to separate the Eels.
Yeah, sure, that's a good shout.
Yeah, so okay, let's launch into it because we have a whole bunch of players that maybe could or should be targets at some point for the Eels. Not all of them, obviously, and I'm going to throw in an extra one to who we're listing here, John. But we're looking at the news that Liam Martin is going to chase the coin, and then you can also add in Preston from the Dogs, Duncan, and also Willison. They're all going to test that market in November. I'm going to throw in he's not in the same position as these players, but Bradman Best.
Yes,
as well, John.
We've mentioned in previous shows, but Chad was talking about it, saying Best negotiations are broken down between he and the Newcastle Knights from what was essentially understood to be a confirmed retention there, going back a month or two, to suddenly the Knights and he are apart. And I don't know what Newcastle's situation is. They've spent pretty lavishly on players already, and also bringing in former Eel and current Warrior Murata Niokore into next year as well. So they might be feeling the pinch a little bit more than we anticipated. I don't know. Yeah, Joel, that's a player. A player that's on the list as well there too. But Joel mentioned that Xavier Willison also looking to test the market on November. There's another player I'd be very interested in too. But yeah, Bradman Best, such an interesting player, Craig, because obviously at his best, Hodder, is a genuine representative star. It was a difference maker for New South Wales in the games he's played. What terrifies you with Bradman is that he is fragile. Those hammies, those big meaty hammies, they can't contain all his power. And he tends to spend a bit of time on the sidelines. But Best is the kind of player that you get him in the blue and gold, and you get him there with Mitchell Moses. I know they're playing different sides of the field, but you say, just as a general team thing, you get him there, and you suddenly got two players with Talon De Silva, maybe three if he can continue growing. Three players, if they get hot for 4 games, which is the final series, and they've got the potential to be X factors through an entire final series and win your premiership. Obviously, you need more pieces around that. It's not just as easy as saying get 3 players and get them in form. But Best is a guy that can win you matchups. He is a guy that can get the one-on-ones and make the explosive play. But there is the big asterisk. Those hammies, they're tender little boys. So that's a buyer beware there. How comfortable are you taking that risk? I think the Eels are in a position where they need to take a risk. So I'm not saying no to Bradman Best, I'll tell you that. I think that's, even if the Eels were in a good position, Best is still a player with the upside to win you games. And I think that's always a foundational point when you're looking at a marquee recruit or a pseudo-marquee recruit is, can they win you games? Best can.
John, with everyone else that we just listed there, if you're the Eels, who do you just go all in on? Just try to come up with an offer that's impossible to say no to.
I love Jacob Preston.
Well, actually, first question is, do you go in with an offer like that to any of them? And if so, who?
Hasey's also pointing out that Bradman Best's father-in-law is a pretty passionate Parramatta fan. That's correct. That's hopefully a selling point for us in any prospective negotiations. But I think his father's also a Manly player, or former Manly player, obviously. So there are funny split loyalties there when it comes to the two patriarchal figures in his life. And Gazen's mentioning Herbie as well. Yeah, Herbie's obviously going to be on the market November 1.
Put a line through Herbie.
They're all the talk about the Roosters with Herbie. I think I'd love Parramatta to be able to throw their weight around like the Tricolours, but yeah. So Michael saying, is Robert Toyer available? No, I think he's on lock and key with the Tricolours there. They're going to pair him opposite of Herbie would be the plan there. Looking at that list of players there, Craig, I think the two that really jump out to me, and I love Bradman Best and I'll be happy to get him, But in terms of the youth to talent payoff, I love Jacob Preston, and I think I'll be willing to take a punt on Xavier Willison on high upside there. Wilson's got dual positional versatility. Broncos have used him on both the edge and through the engine room as well. And I think he's the rare big player that's got the engine and agility to play bigger minutes in the current metagame, which is very nice, sort of akin to a younger Junior Barlow in that regard. But Preston really jumps out to me because he's a weapon on that left edge, and that just gives you great balance in the team there. He's young. He projects as good leadership material. If you watch him interview, if you watch him in his role at the Bulldogs, I think there's a potential future captain there. I would be going very aggressively for Preston if the Dogs let him hit the market, which seems to be the indication right now because the two sides per 360 this week seem to be pretty far apart. So I'll be gunning for Preston. I'll be gunning for Willison, although I think the Broncos probably get a Willison deal done. Although I don't know what's going on with the Broncos. There's a lot of roster stuff happening for them. There's like they'll entertain the idea that what's his name? The 5'8's on the outer there now, and maybe heading to South Sydney this week. Which I suppose if he's off-field indiscretions wouldn't surprise me. But Preston's probably my number one there, and then probably close between Best and Willison after that. I like Hudson Young, but he's coming off the Achilles. I think he's probably going to try and maximise his value. I like Liam Martin, but he's the oldest of the bunch and wants $1 million a season. He'll probably get that from PNG or maybe the Bears if he wants to head out west. Yeah, Ezra Mam, yeah it's Mam. Yeah, I would settle for any of those three as the priorities for mine. Primarily Preston.
I let me throw it to chat then. Just give me one. If they could only get one for the Eels,
let me poll this.
Who would they want?
So start a poll. So wait, it's only yes or no. Oh, I can add options. I can do it. I have the technology. So this is Jacob Preston. This is Bradman Best. This is who did I just say? Xavier Willison with 2 L's. Give me other name, Craig. Who was it? Liam Martin, Hudson Young.
Yeah.
I can't have another option.
Yeah, and Duncan.
I can't add another option. Oh no. All right, let's get rid of Liam Martin. Tallis Duncan. Tallis Duncan / other. No, let's just go other. Let's go other. Other includes Duncan and Martin and pick one player to add November 1. Did I just break chat? No, it got there. Okay.
Now, while we get the results on this, just very quickly, you were talking before about the problems with hamstrings. What about Metcalf from the Warriors?
What about hamstrings and goal kicks? 3 of them.
Oh,
the 2 South players, Bud and the little fella who I keep forgetting, and then the luckless Metcalf. I felt so bad for him, Craig, because the footage of that one was so visceral because he turns around and you see him going, and then second time, he knew straight away it was a bad hammy, and it's in line with how luckless he's been throughout his career. A prodigiously talented player when he's been on the park, but absolute glass cannon, and that's why I do think some of the talk. Yeah, Ashton Ward, the little fella I keep forgetting. He's made of nothing in terms of his build, but yeah, Ward did it against us, and then followed up by Bud Sullivan doing it. The Fox promo did him dirty, Ron. Yeah, they put the bad juju on him for sure. But it's why I do think some of the talk about the Dragons making that huge jump next year is a bit premature, because a huge reason of their jump would be that he is at the helm leading them in the 7. But he has not put together anything close to a full season in years. Like, if he gets to double digits, it'd be a benchmark for him the way he's going right now. And that's such a shame, because he has been electric and a genuine Dally M contender when healthy. But, mate, some players...
What year did he make his NRL debut? Was it like around 2020 or 2021?
Luke Metcalf debuted in 21 with the Sharks and has, so 21 and is now season 26. He has played 45 games. 45 games.
Yeah, across 6 seasons.
And some of that with Cronulla was, offset by the fact he wasn't the frontline playmaker there. So I understand that there's some contingency to the numbers being down. But he's been a Warrior since 23. So 23, 24, 25, 26 now this season. He's played 38 games for him. So he's played a season and a half across 4 seasons now. And that's just, he might come good for different, for change of scenery maybe with those hammies. But as we've seen with players like Tommy T, when there's long-term hammy concerns, they just linger. Same thing with Kieran Foran. It was a big issue for him too in the prime of his career outside of the mental health issues. Hammies are such a... And the problem with hammies is that there is then referred issues with the back, with other parts of the leg too. Sometimes you see it in the knees. Because it's such a big muscle group that when something goes wrong and you try and adjust your body biomechanically, it puts other things out of balance and you'll see supplementary issues rise up because of it. So it's a real shame. He is a fantastic player to watch, a true difference maker on the field, but mate, just cannot stay on the park.
Now, John, we'll head back for that poll, and just as we do head back to chat, also wanted to give a shout out to Lara, who I think is in chat tonight. I met her and her dad, Brad, in the stadium on the weekend and forgot to give them a shout out in the instant reaction. As I said, if I don't write it into the phone straight away,
we had about a dozen shout outs in the instant reaction as well. To be fair, this week it was a busy day out at CommBank, so we do apologise. So
Lara and Brad, thanks for saying g'day at the stadium, and thanks for being in chat tonight there, Lara. So how are we looking with the everyone's thoughts on the player that they would target?
Bearing in mind the poll wasn't quite as granular as we would have liked because the other component comprises of some composition of Liam Martin, Hudson Young, and Tallis Duncan. So any other voters that were in that poll, just pop in the chat now what you voted for other, whether it was Duncan, Martin, or the other one, Duncan, Martin, and Best Young. So the votes were in favour of Xavier Willison, 37%, Arvo with 27%, and then a split between Preston and Best at 18%. So Willison, the most popular candidate, but pretty close to the other 3 options there, and obviously pending who the other component was amongst those players there. Mike went for Duncan, good pick there. Obviously an ascending young player there out at South Sydney. I wouldn't be surprised. Neil as well going Duncan. So it looks like the early running for the other is Duncan, which would put him at least alongside Preston and Best there pretty comfortably on the percentage splits. So Willison the favourite, and that's if he gets the open market, which was a potential based on what we saw in the media today, Craig. I don't know if you saw that presser. He wasn't unhappy at Brisbane, but I think they were a bit far apart because he's asking for big money. Like the Eels would have to take a punt on potential here. We're talking close to 7 digits, but very talented player. And I suppose it depends on the Lenya situation because you can only invest so much into the middle. But I do like Xavier Willison. Chris is
and not only can you only invest so much in the middle, John, but probably some of the brightest young Eels talent coming through are middle forwards.
Yeah, there's a lot of good pathways talent there, and not all of it's going to work out as we do stress, but it means that you're probably going to have to invest your resources in other positions. We've got Chris said his other vote was for Campbell Graham, be a solid back on addition. Shane's asking why I can't do the poll. It might have had to have refreshed the stream, Shane. The YouTube stuff can be a bit scuffed in that regard. Charlie, I'll get your comment in a second. We'll just wrap up with this one here. But yeah, Shane does explain that Matterson is medically retired. Mike's mentioning those players, Big Sam, Big T, Ryder, and so on. Also, Steve Nunn as well comes off the cab immediately. Jackson Coyner. But beyond that, I know he's not a lock forward, but not a prop forward. He's a lock forward, but Hayden Bell. There's some good middle talent coming there. So, yeah. And just Charlie, Ryan Matterson is taking up cap space this year because the way the medical retirement provisions work is that it has to happen on the field. Like, as stupid as it is, it has to be directly tied to a specific incident for an injury. So the Eels didn't get cap dispensation for Matterson this year, as I understand, Craig. that he was fully on the cap this year as a existing contract. But his contract was expiring this year, so regardless, it's not going to be a change in our cap situation. But he did medically retire this week, so we talked about that earlier. But really unfortunate circumstances. Sorry for Matterson, but certainly wishing the best in his future endeavours there, because medical retirements for concussions are something that I will never rip a player for. That's very serious stuff. On a other note here, in terms of those signings, your boy is saying, would you take Fanua Bole from the Tigers? I would seriously consider Bole. He's an interesting one. He's come on really nicely. He's actually one of the better post-contact runners in the game, Craig. And you saw him score a great try against us, obviously, which may or may not be coloring some people's perceptions of him in terms of recent memory. But Bole is actually being one of their better players. And if you follow Rugby League eye test, he grades really well on some of the metrics that Carlos likes to do or does track there. So I wouldn't say no to Bole. It'd be interesting sort of leg speed addition to the middle.
Yeah, I think because we're talking about the recruitment and potential recruitment coming into the Eels, I think they really do have to be selective around some of those middle forwards, because I keep coming back to it. The best talent that's coming through in the Eels at the moment is around those middle forwards. Well, when I say the best talent, I mean potentially the best talent coming through. And when you start adding too many players that are maybe not what you'd call the elite players, because I'm all for us adding some elite middles, but if you start adding players that are maybe what we might term, John, as maybe some floor raisers rather than ceiling raisers, there's an opportunity cost, I think, that starts to filter in with the younger ones.
That is always the juggling act between recruitment and retention, is that every player you sign is another slot and spot taken from a young player coming through, and you need to offset the known or expected benefits of bringing in player X externally versus what the cap savings and upside could be of player Y internally. And that is a really big challenge for the Eels in the coming seasons, is that they absolutely need the big ticket free agents, but they need to give the opportunities to some of those young players coming through. And again, I do want to stress that as much as we love these young players, not all of them are going to pan out in the NRL. It's just literally what all the data says across history, that you can have an incredible class of young players coming through. Some won't hit. There'll be players that we aren't anticipating being NRL starters that might come through and impress us and surprise us. But that is literally how it works. And I'm just hoping that more hit than they don't with this group. I saw a question from Joel. Joel, where are you? We also had a super chat come in. I'll get to that very quickly. Where's Joel's question? Joel says, what about our new CEO? Who are you guys hoping for? I don't know if you already spoke about it previously on another episode. We have spoken about the CEO a couple of times, Joel, but I'm happy to take your question. The Eels have been, and when it comes to stuff on this sort of serious nature, when you look at the press, I always look at what Adrian Pashenko's writing. He's very well dialed in with the club, and he linked a couple of players there, and he's intimated that the primary candidate for the Eels is Matt Cameron, former Eel, now Penrith football CEO, and obviously overseeing all their staggering success in the last half a decade, or more than half a decade now. And the other one that the Eels have been linked to is, again, speaking of Cameron George, the Warriors CEO. And that's not to say that the group of candidates wouldn't be beyond that, Craig, but they're the two names that I've seen put out there front and centre right now by Pashenko. And both very good operators, because Cameron of the Matthew variety gets all the plaudits right now because of the dynasty that was built there by him and other. It wasn't just him, but he was a huge part of it there. But what the Warriors are doing now, it's obviously significantly on the genius of Webster as the coach, but also the CEO's done a great job luring players to New Zealand, not seen as a destination or a choice destination by the larger Australian-bound population, which if you can get them to New Zealand, you think you can get them to Parramatta. But also turning that Warriors pathway system, the junior pathway system, into a great pool of potential from that into actual tangible production on the field. And they're two things that the Eels could definitely want to be tapping into there. So I like both those names put out there as well. I'm not sure if anyone else comes to the mind at the top for you, Craig. I think, if you're looking for the best of the best outside of that, the Roosters, who have, I was looking at him the other day, Joe Kelly is out there. I've seen Peter Parr brought up in the past. He's obviously got a long list of plaudits and credits in the NRL, but I do like the two Camerons in particular. I think that's, if you're talking about the club doing the right process, they're excellent places to be starting with. The question is, can the club get it done? And this is a non-negotiable now. The Eels have a chance to swing for the fences, hit a home run, and this CEO appointment will foundationally change their future. Like it could be what aligns everything for a premiership run, or what leads us to a longer run of mediocrity.
John, I think the Eels will go down the path of appointing someone who has already a strong track record, like where it's possible. They'll recruit someone who's got a strong track record already in NRL administration. Maybe have a bit more of a football background before stepping into a CEO role. What I mean by a football record is maybe coming through an administrative pathway within a football organisation, rather than coming from outside and necessarily then being in a CEO's role, that maybe they've got that sort of overall football club experience as well, and that they have a successful track record. I would be very surprised, because the name Shane Richardson was coming up. I'd be very surprised if they went down that path, mainly because he has success on his resume early on, but maybe some controversy in more recent times. So I think the two that you mentioned are involved in current success, and if the Eels are able to lure people of that calibre to the club, then we will be doing particularly well. Now, can we lure people of that quality to the club? Forget where we sit in terms of the competition ladder as being a detriment to recruiting someone in a CEO role. If you're talking about taking on a CEO role, an Eels CEO is one of the highest profile jobs that you could take on. It actually would be a coveted
absolutely.
position.
You're tapping into the second biggest. I know Penrith are right there with us in terms of Western Sydney, but one of the top junior catchments in the NRL. It's one of the biggest brands in the code, in spite of our lack of success on the field in the context of the premiership hunt. And we've also dominated in the women's space in terms of the pathways as well. Again, the product at the highest level needs to be worked on. You take on this task as a CEO, like looking to be the guy or the girl who turns the Eels into from the sleeping giant to the woken giant, and all the acclaim and plaudits that come with it. It's a challenge, no doubt, because we just, in spite of ourselves, cannot find consistent success. But the resources are there, and I think that's the big selling point, is that you've got state-of-the-art facilities there with the COE. You've got a top-tier home field in Combank. You've got growing pathways in the women's and men's that are equal to anyone going around. It's just, it needs the hand and the vision at the top to bring it all together, and that is tempting. And I think Joel was saying, where did you come ago? He said he would love either of those, Warriors and Panthers, both leading charges in terms of well-run clubs. Agreed. And what I like about both those candidates, Joel, is that the NRL is incredibly volatile right now, and the meta game and the rule changes and all the stuff, it lurches from year to year. Penrith have navigated all that largely without a blip. And the Warriors, as we've seen, and again, a lot of credit's got to go to Webster in the playing roster there. They've done a great job adapting to the constantly changing metagame as well. And that's come with some really good recruitment under that division done by Cameron George there. And that's been, the Warriors have always struggled to get Australian recruits over there. And look, they've lost some guys too. Mitch Bunnett, comes to mind immediately as someone that's been there and now is leaving. But that happened to them all the time in the past. And more recently, they've managed to find really good recruits from Australia, and some of them overlooked, like Ford, and some of them, were risky upside guys like Metcalf, and they've parlayed that into being a very competitive team for a number of seasons now. So I like both those candidates 100%. And again, the vision and the process by the club is 100% spot on right now, but that's only half the battle. They've identified the right kind of people, the people that I think can make a difference, but they've now got to get the John Hancock from one of them onto the paper, and got to get it. And it might be carte blanche, it might take a carte blanche, like name your price. That might be what it takes, but the Eels have to be willing to spend here alongside selling that vision, Craig, of being a genuine visionary in the code. You can be the person that takes over the Eels and leads them to glory. So I like that. And then, by the way, Charlie, massive thank you, mate, for the super chat. $10, no comment again, like Joel before. You guys can leave questions in the super chats if you do want something in there. We will obviously prioritize addressing them. But massive thanks to Charlie for the $10. Very generous, mate. I'm seeing a lot of support for Cameron. Seeing a lot of people saying not Richardson, which I'm actually pleased to see, because Richardson's been a good NRL operator, but I want great, Craig. I don't want good. I want to shoot for greatness. I'd rather take the risk and shoot for greatness than settle for being okay to solid. And the thing with Richardson too is that he's been successful, and I don't want to undermine his success, but he won a title back in 2003 with the Panthers, and he won a title in 2014 with the South Sydney Rabbitohs, right? There, his 2 premiership stops there.
Yep.
The 2014 Rabbitohs, he was there with Bennett for a while. It was the Maguire blurst touch, the blessing of winning the first year premiership, and then the curse of the fall off after that. They got the bunnies over the hump there. So he's been successful, but not any time in the last decade. And as I said to you, Craig, if he couldn't get the West Tigers to the finals and end that drought, which was, 15 years now? 2010, is that when their last finals appearance was? Like, if he couldn't end that drought, how's he going to be ending the 40 years that we're looking at for the premiership? So I like the 2 cameras that we've been linked to. I don't know if there's any other left field considerations they'd want. Mitchie is saying Parramatta can spend what they want as a CEO. There's no soft cap in that position. Yes. CEO wouldn't fall under football operations. Even though it's a football position, it's not football operations like the GM and physios and support staff would be. So yes, you can spend absolutely big there. In that vein, Mitchie, you asked us who do we like. Either of the 2 Camerons. I like. I mean, the Matt Cameron connection. Having the real genuine Parramatta heritage is always an allure, Craig. Having a Parramatta aspirational figure there is always good. But mate, I'm in a position too where I think having the outside influence wouldn't be a bad thing either. And Cameron George would bring that to the table too. And coming from,
but I think with when you talk about the outside influence, I think Matt Cameron's been away from the club long enough
that his vision wouldn't be clouded by Parramatta biases.
Yeah.
And obviously coming from the Panthers, the most successful operation in the NRL in the modern era. It's not a guarantee he would be successful here, but he knows what it would take to overhaul juniors and bring them into line for a consistent NRL production.
So let's move on from there, unless we end up with some questions coming back as we get to the end of the NRL segment. But we are, time-wise, we're getting close to that 2-hour mark. So we want to power through. We did say there was a lot we needed to get through with the NRL because there are some big stories around. Josh Papali'i officially announcing his retirement.
What a beast.
And quite an emotional announcement that was as well.
Did you see his little fella? That is a chip off the old block. Oh, my God. Like father, like son. If he turns out to be half the player that his dad was, he'll be a very good NRL player. Josh, awesome player. Could have been a Parramatta Eel if it wasn't for the name and shame on the bus. Remember all those years ago for the backflip. I was thinking on this today, Craig, and I know that we've got beef with the Raiders over the past, and there's always been, the Hayne and what's his name, Dugan arguments back in the past, and who was a better fullback back then. But the Raiders, they've got some shocking parallels to the Eels in terms of having all-time club great players, not necessarily legends, but club greats. Well, Josh is a legend. Just going down as missing that all important title. The Eels had Hindmarsh and Birdie, among others, in that group of players in modern times that could have, should have won a title, with circumstances that were outside their control. You think of, obviously, Josh there, Papali'i, who's their Hindmarsh, most capped player, like talismanic forward. But they also had, I know, he's not a superstar, but Croker was kind of like their Luke Burt, prolific try-scoring, goal-kicking back that could have won a title in 19 as well. And they had that 19 title taken away, the ability to win that title taken away in pretty dubious circumstances of the literal referee influence of the ball hitting the referee there that changed the course of the game. It sucks. Seeing like one club greats like Papali'i going out without a ring really sucks. And he was an absolute weapon. Like there aren't too many players in the modern era that you be considered feared, but he played when in his prime, even as an older forward, but in his prime, he was a feared forward. He hit. There's like some footage of him just absolutely burying Jamie Bura. Remember him, a blast from the past there. And he dead set murdered him legally, completely clean hit. He sent him into next week. What a stud.
Yeah, and of course, really good mates with Junior as well. Adam Dewey, the injury to his shoulder.
Shoulder has been playing for. He's finally decided to pull the plug on the season and take a 5-month plus shoulder op. I think they were saying on 360 he's racing to be fit for the preseason / round 1. So that's a pretty serious injury there. That's the kind of thing that the Tigers weren't seriously making the finals for a while. Like that just reeks to me of bad management. Like if he's going to be out for nearly half a year, you're better off getting it done sooner rather than later. If you're not going to be A, making the finals, or B, not being anything more like less than afterthoughts in the finals. So,
they just lurch from one issue to another.
Did you speaking of the Tigers? Did you see what Samuel Fainu's asking for? We didn't have his on the run sheet. Did you see the reports? What he's asking for? Very talented young forward, probably the pick of the Fainu brothers, at least the ones in the NRL right now. There are reports on 360 that he's asking for $1.2 million a year. He's worth half that on potential. No wonder they've been clearing the deck to try and get the Fainu brothers. Good Lord.
Yeah. Yes. He was enormous for Manly, wasn't he, in the pathways?
Yes, yes. I mean, you could see the potential with all the Fainu boys. Latu was a very good half in the pathways as well, but Samuel has always been the most talented, at least based on what I saw of Manly in there.
Yeah,
big athletic hybrid forward between edge and back row, but absurd money, and I don't know, just let the Tigers pay, but let them pay it.
Speaking of injuries, Trindle, isn't it? I mean, you talk about. I mean, we've had the Eels have had a horror year for injuries the entire year, right? So far off the scale that I get annoyed when commentators try to compare, or try to suggest that other clubs have had it worse than the Eels when it comes to injuries. No one's had it worse than the Eels this year, and I've even seen our own supporters say, "Oh, but look, if you look at the standard of the Eels players that are injured, it wasn't going to make a difference to our team." Of course it makes a difference to the team because they prepared for the pre-season. Like we didn't have a premiership winning roster. Let's put that on the table first of all, right? But the other thing that is true is that the bottom end of this 8 is the most inconsistent group of teams that you would ever see. And the fact that the Eels have either beaten or been in the contest strongly against teams at the bottom end of the 8 without our strongest team.
Yeah.
And no matter what you say, those players that are out injured, a lot of them would have been featuring in the team on a weekly basis. They prepared for the pre-season for that. It works on combinations, those sorts of things. So as we've got into the back end of the season where the combinations that we've been left with have had a bit of time to be together, we've had a few results go our way. I'm not overstating the form. We've all seen some of the games and even the poor form in a winning game like our game against the Tigers. I'm not suggesting that the Eels have done
from the Knights down on that ladder, Craig, and the Knights have also been a great story this year. But the Eels have tangoed with the Knights, the Rabbitohs, the Cowboys, the Dogs, the Sea Eagles, to highly competitive levels. Like you said, the back end of that 8, it is a mess. And Newcastle separate themselves from some of the mess below that. I want to say that too. The Knights have been way better than the others. But the Eels, with their crippled, makeshift, messy roster that they've had this year, and again, with a lot of things that they're not controlling within their own purview right now too, that really needs to be stressed, that there are recruitment issues, there are coaching and player issues, and then there are just straight up the injuries. And I think the injuries, they've been so prevalent for so long that there is genuine apathy, especially in the wider NRL fan base, but even among Parramatta fans. Not considering that the Eels have missed, what was like 260 games worth of stuff now? I don't. Where's the NRL physio ladder when I need it?
Yeah, no, it's probably sitting between 160 and 170, somewhere around there. I would think, John. Like, for us to end up where we will, which will be close to 200 games missed through injury, it's insane. I thought it was a lot the other year when I worked it out to be about 140 to 150 games that were missed. This season absolutely dwarfs it.
But the Eels have been obviously combating their injuries all year. For the Sharks, it is incredibly untimely. They lose Jesse Ramian as well. Trindle, he's been the engine for that playmaking group. Brayley too. I don't want to disrespect Brayley. He's a very good dummy half. Nico Hines is a good player, but he is a player that is unlocked by the other spine members. Will Kennedy, very solid fullback. I like him, but he is what he is. Like, he's a guy that gives you great value for his slot in the roster, but he's not a superstar. Trindle was the closest thing they had amongst the 6, 7, and 9 to a star. A little bit mercurial, but he was doing some great stuff this year. Was had the 6 on his back, but was ostensibly the 7. That did all the key playmaking. That is a huge loss for them, and I can't get a read in the Sharks, Craig, because every time I think they're flat track bullies, they largely conform to that, but this year they snapped away from it. They beat some good teams. They got into the grind and really established themselves for a good stretch through the midpoint of the season. But the wheels have fallen off the last couple of games. Like, I know everyone's talking about how good the Dragons have been this year, like in the back end of this year. Cronulla played awful against the Dragons. Like, they should have won that game. And then beyond that, obviously the injuries adding up, but then they lose to the Raiders. They beat the Bunnies and the Seagulls, but I don't know. Like, their run there before that was great. They dusted up the Dolphins. Beating the Broncos doesn't mean much, but out of the bye, they beat the Broncos, smashed the Dolphins, squeezed past the Knights. Obviously, at that point, of being a little bit injured. Dust up Manly, which Fosbor, blah blah blah. Beat the Rabbitohs, but then dropped to the Sharks and the Raiders.
Dragons of the Raiders.
Sorry, dropped to the Dragons and the Raiders.
The thing is,
they did lose themselves technically.
But the thing is, we've seen this before with the Sharks, haven't we? This is following a pattern. Yeah, and we complain about Parramatta's DNA and our issues on the field. The Sharks have got their own issues there, don't they? Like, they're flat track boys until they're not. I'm sorry. And I thought maybe they'd turn the corner this year with some of those wins against, again, with the benefit of hindsight, the win against the Broncos is not impressive. But they smashed the Dolphins. That was a great win. They beat an understrength Newcastle team. They beat Manly at what was the twilight of Fosbor as the wheels were really coming off. They beat the Rabbitohs, good win. But then they dropped to the Dragons and the Raiders. And I can't get a beat on them. John, I'll put it to you in this context. Traditionally, the premiers of the competition will have somewhere between 6 to 10 elite representative level players in their team. I would suggest to you that if the Sharks won the premiership, they're not in that mould.
What we got?
They would sit outside that mould.
Mulatalo, he's up there. Iro, I like, but he probably hasn't consolidated this year as much as you would have liked.
Yeah, but are they that real elite? And when I say elite,
Mulatalo he's a genuine difference maker on the wing. Brayley obviously is. Nickera was, but has been well below his best this year. Teague Wilton's tapered off a little bit. Yeah, you're right. Like they've got a lot of guys that flirt with being very good, and in the past have been very good, but not this year. And I think you're right. They've maybe got 2 or 3 guys. You know, Braden Trindle's probably his form warrants being around that area, like at least as a offensive playmaker. But yeah, their roster has always been a very well-rounded roster, but one bereft of star power. And I guess you see some limitations there when not everyone's on the same page, like in terms of form and connection.
Yeah, and I think this injury. So when I started off, I said a wrong time of year for an injury. I'm meaning a specific injury, like we're seeing this year with Trindle, where he is such a key player to their fortunes. So I think that injury is going to be significant. I'm actually quite happy from the perspective that we play them next week. So I don't mind the fact that we get a home game against them without
Sharks,
Trindle in the team. So I actually believe we're a genuine chance of beating the Sharks in the next match. And I know that falls against the line of thinking where you just play the next game ahead, and we've got the Dolphins next up, which is a monumental challenge. But here we are. I'm able to look ahead at our next home game and go, don't mind the fact that Trindle's out. I think we're a very good chance of going well in that game. Just moving further along in our run sheet, Slater, of course, stands down as Queensland coach. The rumours about him being the successor to Craig Bellamy only strengthen now.
What losing to Laurie Davey does to a man, hey? But this one a little bit out of left field. And in saying that, Slater's been a little bit ambiguous about his future at the Origin level for a couple of years. He hasn't committed at no point had he committed hard to being the long-term Queensland coach, if I recall correctly. And of course, for that entire time, it was seen but never confirmed that he would be the heir de facto to Craig Bellamy at Melbourne. And with Bellamy having the unconfirmed neurological issue that we'll see him coach next year, but the projection is that he would step down from there. It does line up nicely for Billy to come back, take some sort of consultancy or assistant coach role with Melbourne, and then maybe take over the reins in 28. That would line up nicely. In saying that, Bellamy's been, and this is before any understanding of a neurological issue or concern, has been 1 year away from retiring for a decade now. And it wouldn't shock me in the least if he kept pushing on into 28 and beyond, because that's what coaches are like. They're just built different. But I could definitely see Slater being the understood successor to Bellamy there.
I would imagine Craig Bellamy. Now, I don't think he would let pride or ego get in the way of decisions, but were he to step down like now because of the neurological issue, I don't think that would sit well with him after this season. I think he would ideally like to leave the Storm in a better position than where it is sitting right at this point. Speaking of the positions of a club, I just wanted to finish quickly by having a reference to the Broncos and the Tigers. I think without question, those two teams are currently the worst two teams in the competition. I think, although the table doesn't show it, that the Dragons are playing better football than both of those teams. The Broncos, I'm sorry, if I'm I know they delivered a premiership last year. I would argue that Reece Walsh delivered that premiership last year, that if he wasn't in the sort of form that he was in last year, which was Jared Hayne-like,
incandescently,
the Broncos would not have played finals football last year, and you would be talking about yet another year of failure. And as it was, he just went on the sort of run that ignited the Broncos to win games where they had seemingly lost in that run through to grand final victory. So Reece Walsh not being either in the same level of form this year or suffering injuries at different points in the season has weakened them as a unit, but I think weakened them in their resolve even. Like, they've still got a roster that on paper many supporters of other clubs would be envious of, just on the names that they're able to trot out. And yeah, there's been some injuries, but again, not like the number of injuries that the Eels have had. And we're talking about a premiership level team that has just fallen right off the cliff and looking like they don't give a damn about what happens out there on the field. There's been performances
first the worst
that have been atrocious.
First the worst would be the 56 Magpies. Is that the team they've been quoting in the media?
I think that was it. But I think they have technically, forget about the ladder. I think they've technically gone from the first to the worst performing team.
I see more fight from the West
NRL.
Tigers than I do from the Broncos. And the West have got their own set of troubles, don't get me wrong. Again, Parramatta not distancing themselves massively, but we are far more competitive in those two rosters right now based on the last 2 months of body of work. I think they were saying if the Broncos, if you took out their Penrith upset, had lost 12 or 13 in the last 3 months.
Yeah.
Like that is insane. Like, it is literally the Dragons to start the season. Yet this is the premiership winning roster, the incumbent champions. And look, you're right about the Reece Walsh being carrying them to the grand final. I still think there's a lot of talent in that roster still, though, as well. Like, I know Haas.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. On paper, they've got a roster that
Haas is
the
being in and out of
envy.
the team, but obviously we talked about how good Willison is. They've got Carrigan, who again's been in and out of the team this year with suspensions and injuries. But where they really lack, and I think part of it is, funnily enough, Billy Walters being out for most of the season hasn't helped their dummy half course, because I actually think he's probably their best number 9. But they're 6 and 7, and whoever they've been throwing in there have just been so ordinary. And I don't know how much that stymies the rest of the team, but it is a roster that is grossly underperforming, isn't it? Like, grossly underperforming. And I don't know. How do you attribute blame? Like, how do you dissect that when you're doing your end-of-season review between coaching and playing and preparation, from being the premiers to there is a feasible path where the Broncos finish last. Dragons have to win out, and that involves beating out Eels. But if the Broncos lose out, the Dragons win out, then they're going to be the wooden spooners, which is crazy.
Yeah. It's unlikely to happen in terms of the Dragons.
It is
more
unlikely
to happen because of the Dragons winning out. That's the most unlikely thing. The Broncos losing out, that's possible.
That is
but
quite
the Dragons winning out.
Yeah.
Maguire basically, I think he pointed to it being an attitude issue in his post-game presser.
He popped off in that presser too. I understand why. This is a coach that feels like he's not connecting with the players right now, and they're not responding to what he is putting down. They're not picking it up. And can you imagine, as a coach, tapping into what they had last season, where you're the best team in the competition, and then turning around and producing this? Like, it'll drive you crazy. So I can understand why.
I think the one thing, John, that everyone in rugby league would have predicted is that Madge was going to get some sort of result when he first started, and it would end in tears.
Some sort of fall off, yeah. Yeah.
It's the way I thought it was going to happen, John, was I thought they'd have a very good first season under Maguire. They would come close to winning, if not win, in their second season under Maguire. Then they would have the rapid fall off.
He's fast-tracked everything.
Season 3.
Year 1 premiership into year 2 fall off.
Yeah. It was an absolute fast-tracking. And in regard to to the position that they're in. Again, no surprise when it came to the reputation of Maguire, but by the same token, either he's just a coach that cannot resonate with the modern day footballer for anything more than a season.
Yeah, he feels real old school in his methodology. Yeah, and there's a lot more ego massaging that goes on in the modern game. Yeah,
and even to that extent, that might even fit in with the Broncos winning in spite of him. If you wanted to be really cruel on Maguire, I think it's more likely that he is a hard head when it comes to how he goes about his coaching and doesn't accept.
It makes it hard to pass what we saw on was it Tiger Town? Is that what they called it? Because he seemed so tepid, and I don't know if he was holding back because of the cameras on that one, but because there was a whole drama of who was it on Free? On Free they brought up the old, because they're doing the interview with Marty Tapau, Craig, with Code Sports. Who was the Warriors and West Tigers back rower? That oh my goodness, Chad will get me on this one in a sec. But there was a Warriors and Tigers back rower, Elijah Taylor. Is that?
Yeah.
Who came out on socials mocking how much of a hothead that Madge was, and when he was getting fired up, you'd see the veins popping out of his head and he'd be going and whatnot. And that's the post that Marty Tapau apparently mistakenly liked that led to the whole fallout at Brisbane. So you hear this stuff about how much of a hothead he is, but at Tiger Town, in the Tiger Town doco, he was like, so milquetoast almost. So I don't know if that was him dialing it back for the cameras, but it's a disconnect from the Madge that we're told is there and seems to be pretty clearly there by the players, and the Madge that we saw on cameras.
Yeah, it's I think the issue is probably that there would be very few clubs where in the game as it is today that he is capable of being for longer than 2 years, just based on what we're seeing, where he has that capacity to maybe drive a tougher discipline in a short term, but across the longer term, it wears a little bit thin. Now, is that an issue for him? Who's at fault with that? Does he have the right to expect that? I would argue, John, that perhaps he's not too different to someone like a Craig Bellamy, but you might get players not game to stand up to a Craig Bellamy, whereas they might be more.
Bellamy has tenure at Melbourne, and the systems he's put in place have withstood.
Yeah,
various shifts in the metagame. Yeah, I see that. There's also an element of he walked the walk, so sure he gets to talk the talk. It's usually the reverse, right? But Madge, for whatever reason, walks the walk, and then he's talking the talk, gets everyone offside. Like his way wins premierships, proven at both South Sydney and Brisbane, but it just seems to absolutely burn out the players. It is. I'm sure there'll be some sort of post doco expose that comes into what the rise and fall of the 2025 six Broncos and Madge's involvement there. But geez, it's really, it's fascinating as a neutral in this one here. It is very intriguing stuff, but it just makes you wonder how a roster that loaded and talented could fall off regardless of the coach. Like it is a reminder of how important connectivity and motivation and obviously game planning is for the NRL, because the Broncos, who have double the talent of the Eels, triple the talent of the Eels, depending on who you ask, are going to be below par at the end of the season, it looks like. And again, that's not
below everyone except for St George.
That's not a high watermark for the Eels. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to use this to justify how good we are, because clearly we've got issues that we need to be fixing. But it is insane when you think about the context of the Broncos. There'd be Parramatta fans that would kill to have access to some of the talent that's on that roster. And
is it it fair to say that Maguire might be the short favourite to be the first coach that a club parts ways with in 2027?
Well, on again, not putting all my eggs into the 360 basket, but it is the most present and consistent discourse for NRL rumours and media insight. But I think it was is it Riccio that was on there tonight? He was intimating that the Broncos were going to back Madge, and then the panel was a little bit miffed about that one. They were kind of like, well, you can't really back him after what we've seen, this year. But I would think you're right. The history says he's going to be on the outer, but this might be a line in the sand thing for the Broncos. They've let the players run the roost for a while, and they've got some big talent and big egos there. Are they going to back the coach that got them to the premiership, or are they going to back the players? And they've already lost Payne Haas.
You know what? Yeah. And it may well be that if they're looking for a longer term cultural fix, that as much as Madge has that reputation for putting players offside, it may well be that if they follow that line of backing the coach, it might be short-term pain but longer-term gain for them. So, interesting space to watch. I guess the only other thing is with the Tigers, we reflect back on that early season decision to extend Benji Marshall to what was at the end of 2030.
Marshall and Foran, both irrational. I mean, the Marshall one was even more irrational. Just super reactionary stuff. Look, the Tigers at that time, Richardson had walked out. There was a whole internal feud there between him and some of the other operational executives there. And it felt like the Tigers made the Benji move as a reactionary, grab for stability. Like, here's head coach, 5 years, locked in. We're fine. And I don't know. He hadn't shown anything as a coach. Not to say he couldn't have developed this year. That was like, with the benefit of hindsight, we've seen that they haven't. But at the time, he could have let him just play his contract and given him an extension at the end of the season. But instead, they gave him the 5-year extension, and I was like, why? He's showing you like nothing in terms of tangible results, which at the end of the day is the be-all, end-all. Like, if the Eels aren't crushing it next year, Parramatta shouldn't be throwing Jason Riles a 5-year extension. They should be saying, well, he's got another year to run his contract. Let's wait and see. And maybe we have to assess other options if it's that bad. But if we're, floating around the 8 and whatnot, okay. But don't go giving Jason Riles a 5-year extension because you're, top 4 in the first 8 weeks of the competition. Insane. And just like how Manly, I'll say crumbling the pressure, but there was a very overt media campaign by Fox and whatnot to, if Manly don't sign Kieran Foran, they're going to lose him to someone else. To who? Who was going to sign Kieran Foran? Manly were bidding against themselves there. And in the end, they signed Foran to, 3 or 4 years for Kieran. And again, Foran might end up being a good coach, Craig. Like Benji, maybe if enough reps, they'll get there. But these two teams have grossly overpaid, both in duration and the actual money is not an issue because it's while it is an operational expense of the cap, it's not a drama. But what you're losing out in opportunity cost for signing a coach for X amount of years is big. And these guys had not proven themselves. Benji has dealt with adversity, but not necessarily in a good way. And Kieran hasn't faced adversity or hadn't faced adversity up until that slump, and they signed him before the slump. So the Eels aren't the only club in the NRL that have got some operational issues in that regard. It feels like there's some reactionary stuff that happens. It feels like there's some baffling stuff that happens. I couldn't believe that they gave Benji 5 years. I couldn't believe they signed Foran before he dealt with any adversity, at least to a 3-year deal, whatever it was. And Sammy says the Saints putting Young on a 2-year deal is maybe the sort of offer that Foran or Benji should have gotten there. Enough to prove yourself in the short term, but giving the club the flexibility to say, well, you did okay, but we want to hunt for a bigger fish. Or you've done great, let's upgrade you. But these clubs, and the thing is, I'm sort of like rambling here, Craig, and I apologise. The Eels signed Jason Riles for 4 years. They took a big punt on Jason Riles. He may or may not be the right guy for us. We're going to find out next year, probably get a bit bigger piece of clarity there. We might need to be looking for a new coach come next year, I don't know. We might be looking at a guy that'll lock in next year, maybe. That's the dream, right? We haven't gone out and then extended Jason Riles on the back of non-results. That's what the Tigers did with Benji Marshall. They've done nothing under Benji and said, well, here's a 5-year extension on top of your original 3-year deal, whatever it was. That's where that is malfeasance, I would argue, in terms of doing your due diligence on an executive level. That's crazy.
Yeah, and I guess the only thing that I would say to wrap this up is that at the start of this year, on the back of a few wins to start the season, everyone was waxing lyrical about the Tigers and they're going to be playing finals football and what have you. For whatever reason, the last few years of their back end of the season collapses for whatever reason got forgotten about. And it's, for them, it's same old, same old. It's that nothing's changed for them. Nothing's changed whatsoever. And internal issues and fans having enough is press repeat, because it's the path that the club has travelled for the last 15, 16 years. So promise, there's a little bit of promise, but not too much else. And we say this as Eels supporters as well. So it's not as if we're saying, we're having a laugh at you or anything like that. It's we see the pain of West Tigers supporters on social media. It's there's always that false dawn for them, and what makes it worse is that their own administration falls for the false dawn as much as anything else. So therein might lie their problem. And anyway, John, I think we'll just wrap things up. I was
going to say, just to clarify the chat, I did type it out, but 100% right to be backing Riles. Like I'm not saying not to back Riles next year. He should see out his full 4 years for the Eels, but just that the Eels shouldn't rush to sign to an extension if after 2 months of the competition next year we're in the top 4. Let him play out the full season and then start your renegotiation talks for Parramatta there. Like don't do a West Tigers and preemptively do a 5-year extension for your coach. If Riles gets us into the top 4 proper next year, like in the season, you start talking about renegotiations in the off season 100%. But yeah, just learn from your own issues in the past and from the issues that the Tigers and the Seagulls have put on the board right now.
Yeah. So, John, I do have to mention, I had it sent to me a few times via text, Chris Bediol's suggestion about for the musical interlude, we play the recorded chant. So people that are having a shit me with my stance on the recorded chant, that would probably be the cruelest thing to have happen, John, if on our own podcast you suddenly started playing the recorded chant as our mid-podcast musical interlude. So we'll leave that be. That's not getting a run as far as I'm concerned, so don't get any ideas, John. Now, unless there's any breaking news that's happening now or any really pertinent questions that are there, I think we might wrap things up because we've hit the 2.5 hour mark on this podcast, which is more than enough, I think. It's where would that drive take you to? I mean, it'd probably be it's a return trip now to and from the Central Coast, a 2.5 hour podcast just about. So, I think it's more than enough for any of the long distance travelling done by our fans.
The extra metropolitan fans.
I think we're probably very specifically serving Marcus down there in Canberra. So I think he's looking at a 3-hour trip, isn't he, travelling from Canberra?
Yeah,
and I know he does.
Yeah. With the point-to-point cameras.
I know he does put on the podcast to listen to on his trip. So shout out to you there, Marcus, and hopefully see you soon. Anyway, John, we'll wrap things up. Thank you to everyone that's been here live in chat. It's been, as I said, a very long podcast, but there's been plenty to cover. And I'd like to think it's been plenty to really sink the teeth into this week. Thank you to our sponsors, Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta, and of course the home of the Eels, Parramatta Leagues Club. And we will be seeing you there next week in our final Leagues Club appearance for the regular season. So, John, thank you. And stand by, of course, for our preview podcast, which will come later this week. And as I always say, go you mighty Eels, Para proud.